meeting of the Starkville Board of Alderman will now come to order. Please rise for the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance, to be followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You have before you a copy of the modified written agenda. Are there any proposed revisions to the agenda as written?
I've got some.
All right. Alderman Dumas.
Under board business, the consideration of amending the solid waste and recycling committee bylaws to reflect the changes in terms, term limits, and attendance records. I'd like for that to be on consent.
All right, that is item 10A1. Consideration of amending the solid waste and recycling committee bylaws to reflect changes in terms, term limits, and attendance requirements as presented. Alderman Dumas has proposed placing that on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revisions?
I do. Under B, on the report from the Budget Committee, I want to hear that report, but as far as calling for the second public hearing, I'd like that item B1 to be placed on consent.
Proposed revision from Alderman Dumas is to place item 10B1, the calling of a second public hearing on the adoption of the City of Starkville budget for fiscal year 2012 on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revisions?
Item C, consideration of approving the Occidental County Humane Society informational insert in the City of Starkville Electric Department invoices to consent.
Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item C, the approval of the Humane Society informational insert into the City of Starkville Electric Department invoices on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas?
In regard to that, jumping back under public appearances, I'd like to remove public appearances B.
And I see that Ms. Wall is in attendance tonight. Excuse me, Dr. Wall. Dr. Wall, did you have anything that you still needed to say?
That's fine with me, we talked.
We talked about.
All right. So the proposed revision from Alderman Dumas is to remove item 7B, public appearance by Dr. Diane Wall, from the agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been removed from the agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revision?
Item H, consideration of approving the development of renderings for Phase 1 of the master plan, not to exceed $3,000. I'd like to place that on consent.
Now, Alderman Dumas has proposed placing item 10H, the consideration of approval of development of renderings by architect Gary Schaefer for Phase 1 of the municipal facilities master plan for an amount not to exceed $3,000 on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection?
Mayor, do you think that's the best practice to do that before you can, approve the consideration of moving forward with Phase 1? Just from a housekeeping standpoint, or?
Well, it all depends on how you, the board, would like to handle it.
Mr. Mayor, I object to that on consent.
It's been objected to. That matter is not on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, you have further proposed revision?
I do. Item I, discussion and consideration of authorizing the city planner, the city building official, and the city attorney to research and develop requirements for accessory structures and to report back to us on consent.
Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 10I, the discussion and consideration of authorizing the city planner and city building official and city attorney to research and develop requirements for accessory structures on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, that's your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear any objection?
The only question I've got is, since the city attorney's on there and the city building official, what is that? I mean, can one of those tell me what it is, or?
We have a couple of instances in town where temporary storage buildings are being used as primary places of business, and I have a real question about those, and so I've just, this puts Ben, the building official, and the city attorney together to look at what options we have in perhaps regulating those so that they don't continue to pop up all over town in the way that they have.
All right, and let's not have too much discussion on this now. It's either a consentable item or it's not. Any objection?
It's not.
Okay, that item is not on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revisions?
I do. Under Personnel, Item 1, request to hire William Green to fill the vacant position of Office Manager in the Building Codes and Planning Department. To consent.
All right, Alderman Dumas has proposed moving item 11I1, the request to hire William Green to fill the vacant position of Office Manager in the Building Codes and Planning Department as presented to the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection?
Objection.
All right, that matter's been objected to. It will remain on the regular agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revisions?
I have no further revisions.
All right, are there any further proposed revisions? Alderman Vaughn.
Upon the police department, item number 1, request authorization for 2 additional police officers. Hold that to consent.
All right, Alderman Vaughn has made a motion, or has proposed revising the agenda to place item 11J1, the authorization for 2 additional police officers for a motorcycle traffic safety unit, on the consent agenda. Alderman Vaughn, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, it is.
Any objection? Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Do I have any further proposed revisions? Alderman Vaughn?
On the police department, item 2, place consent.
The proposed revision from Alderman Vaughn is to place item 11J2, the request for permission to enter into a motorcycle lease with Harley-Davidson for 2 Road King motorcycles as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Vaughn, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, it is.
Any objection? Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Vaughn, do you have further proposed revisions?
I think that's all.
Do we have any further proposed revisions to the agenda? Alderman Carver.
Mayor, under board business, item D, the consideration of authorizing the funds to extend the Pecan Road overlay to include the full length of the street. Is there a not to exceed or any kind of dollar figure attached to that?
The cost estimate, I believe, is in the neighborhood of $20,000. Is that included in your packet? Was that included in the packet? Okay. You should have that information in your packet.
I'm going to object. Are you intending?
I was going to, but
I'm going to object because it says here that there are no funds currently available, and I think we at a minimum need to discuss where the funds will come from for that project.
okay.
Further proposed revisions to the agenda. Do we have any further proposed revisions? Alderman Corey.
Yeah, under personnel number 7, request authorization to hire a temporary office assistant for sanitation environmental services to replace Carol Joy while she's out.
All right, the proposed revision from Alderman Corey is to place item 11I7, the authorization to hire a temporary office assistant for sanitation and environmental services to replace Carol Joy, as presented to the consent agenda. Alderman Corey, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Any further proposed revisions to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
There's one thing, and I support this about the cemetery. I think the Brush Harbor cemetery that we clean. Who's going to make sure that this project's overseen? You know, we hire these people, and we need somebody out there to make sure that they're going to get the job done. So could you tell me who's going to oversee that project while it's being done?
Is Edward supervising that contract? Or
Bill Green.
oh, it'll be Mr. Green.
Okay, would you make sure all that is done? 'Cause we hire these people, and we need somebody out there making sure we get our money's for it. Ms. Brewer, could you see to that? Thank you.
Do we have any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda as revised is in order.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Corey to approve the agenda as revised. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And there are, first order of business will be the approval of the consent agenda. Is there any objection to the consent agenda as revised? Do we have any objection from the board to the consent agenda as revised? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda as revised is approved. And with no minutes, that will carry us to comments by the mayor and the members of the board. I'd first like to invite everyone to the grand opening of Fire Station number 5, which is going to be tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And I see, fortuitously, we have Chief Mann, who we always have here at these meetings, but we also have an appearance by Phil Spencer tonight. These two people have been working tireless tirelessly with a federal grant program to ensure that this project came into fruition, and it has, and tomorrow we'll celebrate that at 3 o'clock. Everybody is invited to come and celebrate with us. It is now my pleasure to welcome the newest employee of the Starkville workforce, and that is our new Assistant City Planner, Pamela Daniel. Yeah, you'll meet Ben over there and y'all will take a picture. The City of Starkville would like to introduce Pamela Daniel as our new Assistant City Planner in the Building Codes and Planning Department. Pamela is originally from Clarksdale, Mississippi, and graduated from Clarksdale High School. She is a graduate of Jackson State University with a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology and double minors in sociology and marine biology. Pamela also received master's degrees from Jackson State University in urban and regional planning and elementary and secondary education. Before joining the City of Starkville, Pamela worked for the Jackson Public School District as a middle school science teacher. Pamela's parents are Mr. and Mrs. Willie L. Daniel, and she has 2 brothers, Kevin and Gregory Daniel, and 2 sisters, Sharon and Annette Daniel. Before moving to Starkville, Pamela attended New Hope Church in Jackson. In her spare time, Pamela enjoys reading and spending time with her 3 fur babies, a peekapoo named Socks, a Maltese named Bit-Bit, and a poodle named Mocha. Please join me in welcoming Pamela to the board. Yes, thank you. And now we'll move to board comments. We have one comment scheduled tonight, and that is the introduction of our Employee of the Month by Alderman Carver.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a great privilege to do this tonight. This is an employee that I've gotten to know over the last couple of months and got great respect for him. And the Employee of the Month for August 2011 is Tommy Stinson. Tommy is the lead meter man at Starkville Electric and has worked for the City of Starkville since May of 2002. Tommy is very dedicated and is a dependable employee, and his willingness to go that extra mile has proven to be invaluable. During the recent shortage of support staff, Tommy stepped forward to take on additional responsibilities while continuing to perform his duties with efficiency. His knowledge of the various work processes, along with commitment to customer service, has allowed Starkville Electric Department to maintain a high level of customer satisfaction. Tommy listens to understand and then often works to find a solution to any unusual or difficult situation. Tommy is often required to interact with customers in stressful situations, and he always handles himself in a professional manner. Tommy always pushes hard to meet deadlines and meets every challenge with a smile and a constructive attitude. He is a positive influence on the entire department. Tommy is a valuable asset to Starkville Electric and the City of Starkville, and he should be commended for the extra effort he gives every day. The City of Starkville and the Board of Alderman and the Mayor are proud to recognize Tommy Stinson as Employee of the Month for August 2011.
Do we have any further comments from the members of the board? Alderman Ball.
To the board and to all my colleagues in the mayor, to the city. When we had that town hall meeting on the municipal complex, if we had a voter right then, you would have trapped me into a web. But since I talked and met with some of my constituents and a lot of more citizens of Starkville, and there is more important issues right now for $13 million for us to come up with, to allocate to a municipal complex. I look at the drainage problem that we got in a lot of areas, such on Maple Street, and where we all taking the bus tour. We went to these areas, we saw these things in these areas. We said we're gonna fix these things. And on Maple Street, they got drainage problem. Carver Drive, every time it rains, just about you got stuff laying in the street that children don't even need to see. That's just about every time it rains. But we can find $13 million for the municipal complex, but we can't find $300,000 to finish Carver Drive ditch, North Side, and Maple Street. That's kind of puzzling me pretty bad. And we say that we want the quality of life for everybody. How can we want the quality of life for everybody and we continue to let these conditions hang there? The condition at Carver Drive and North Side, those conditions been there 20-some years, and well, we can't find money to fix those, but we can find $13 million. And I got a problem with that, and my constituent got a problem with that. And they saying all we doing is up here just constantly raising taxes, and it seems like that's what we're doing. We had a bond issue with the school. We still didn't get no new school out of all we got school repairs. You got a bond issue with the hospital out there. No new doctors. All your people still running to West Point, Columbus, and Tupelo. Education. We haven't found out why the school is in an uproar, the school system in an uproar. It's a lot of more important things that we need to be trying to find out what's going on, and all our focus now and finna put all this pressure back on the people for a municipal complex. And then you're gonna have an $8 million building on the corner, and then you got 2 blocks. Then you got a ditch down open with all kind of unsafe, unhealthy conditions. 3 blocks, you got another area with all kind of unsafe, unhealthy conditions. And it don't please the people the way we're thinking. We say about the quality of life. The city of Starkville is committed to promoting the highest quality of life for all residents by providing physically sound, responsible municipal service and delivering those services equitable and professional with the highest degree of integrity. What happened to Carver Drive? What happened to Northside Drive? What happened to Maple Street if that's what we intended for? So undoubtedly, the municipal complex is more important than these people's safety and more important than these people's health. Undoubtedly, that's what it is. If we can find money to fund a $13 million municipal complex, I'm sure we can find money to fund the rest of this here.
Do we have any further comments from the members of the board?
Mr. Mayor, let me be recognized. I have 3 issues. Let me go ahead and start with my first one. Let me speak on the first issue, and it's going to kind of hit to the budget just a little bit. And I'm going to start with the ending fund balance, and I'm going to speak to the street overlay and capital improvement. And the last budget that I saw and the last meeting that I was able to attend, we had an ending fund balance that was proposed about $735,000 or thereabout. And in that proposed budget, there was only, as I was informed, $200,000 in new money that would cover only capital improvements, and that would include drainage and street overlay. It is very good to have money in the bank. It's very good to save money. It is going to be hard to operate this city and take care of the necessary recurring expenses with that high inflated ending fund balance. It's just going to be difficult to pay those bills. It is hard to get APAC into our city for less than $400,000. When you're talking about $200,000 just for street overlay and drainage, that is not going to get anything done. In the budget, we do, as Alderman Vaughn said, we do need to have additional monies for Carver Drive. I know this is a sore subject with some, but whether it's so or not, I have a job to do, and my constituents are definitely asking me about the Carver Drive ditch, and this matter has been lingering. It's a very delinquent city matter. It has been outstanding for decades now, and we need to find some money to substantially move toward the closure of this ditch. And my constituent further asked me, Mr. Mayor, why all of a sudden that the federal agency and/or state agency have to have some oversight over that ditch. It has been indicated to me that by some constituent that they do not think that that is some historic landmark, and we're still curious as to how the federal and/or state government and/or state entity got involved in this Carver Drive ditch. We know how to manage our own turf, and we don't need any outside interference from the state and the federal officials on just a common open ditch in our city. And I'm not aware of any other ditch, maybe one other, that there is some type of federal involvement. So hopefully the city will get involved in terms of trying to expedite this process. We had to spend at least about $15,000 to $16,000 just for some sophisticated study as to whether or not we're going to proceed with that ditch. There needs to be some closure there. If this bond matter goes to a vote, and I'm not here to speculate on what the outcome is going to be, but I'm hearing from my constituents, some and others throughout the city, that regularly approach me talking about how overtaxed we are, and Alderman Vaughn touched on that. We have been very significantly taxed with the school bond issue, with the hospital bond issue. They had that bond issue. They got a parking garage, and and it is my further understanding too that a lot of the people, some or a lot of them, are more or less transported out to other areas, and we have the county board of supervisors who seemingly, in my opinion, think that we need to have a tax increase almost annually. And it looked like I read something in the paper the other day where the county school board is, I think, if I recall correctly, is asking the board of supervisors for a millage increase for a new school bus. So I guess we got a new school building, now we need new school buses. So we have to try to make do with what we got, and maybe we need to try to limit the debt ceiling in this county, in this city. We need to. We have a lot of extraordinary spending, and I've been preaching that not for this term. I've been preaching that since 1993, the 6th day of July. And we have expended so much money on government. We created a new department, technology department. We brought on these high-level positions in various departments through the city. We're not going to ever have any extra money to take care of these outstanding projects. The gentleman from 7 also touched on the Maple Street drainage and flood control projects. Those projects have been there since I arrived at this board, and these people need some relief. We need to find some way, and we can do that. It's a matter of how we prioritize the dollars that we have. We can scale the ending fund balance back, and we can do some of these things like the drainage, the street overlay. And I'm gonna go ahead and touch on this matter right now before we get to it. Just like the Pecan Drive Road, it was represented to me that there was 3 streets that's going to be done in Ward 6. I was told by city staff we're going to do Pecan Road. I was told we're going to do Chickasaw and Stowood. And of course, you go back and look in the capital improvement report. You have to just look at a fine-tooth comb to figure out, as a non-engineer, what they meant by that. And of course, I saw in the report where they talk about that they have done partial streets, some this term, but always been past experiences in the past that we did a street, we did the entire street. So we need to make sure we accommodate these taxpayers. I'm going to speak more on that later, but let me conclude this first point. I think we need to just go ahead and get these drainage projects as top priorities. These need to be the top priorities. I think the Carver Drive ditch and the Maple Street flood control and the drainage project and the North Side Drive and other drainage projects, but we cannot get any of these projects significantly done with keeping $750,000 in an ending fund balance. We just can't do it. I mean, what you gonna do with $200,000? I mean, that sounds good, but I've been at this table long enough to understand that, in the past, we've had $250,000, $300,000 with the end fund balance, and we made it. We learned and realized the significance of the tax dollars. So I just want to appeal to the board let's make sure that, in my opinion, that we start taking care of these long-standing projects. And I'm steadily faced with constituents about this Carver Drive. This issue is not going to go away. I'm going to start talking about it regularly, and we just need to make these things happen. And that's all I want to say on that right now on the Carver Drive. But I hope that we'll find monies that we can significantly get this done, so we at least can finalize this matter during this term. Secondly, Ms. Brooks, a housekeeping matter. I just want to bring this to your attention since you have oversight over the department heads. The mayor has announced about the grand opening and dedication for the fire station on tomorrow. I did get an invitation in the mail. It's very important that, that when city staff send out correspondence, that all this is correct. And we need to show leadership in this area. It's not your fault. I'm not putting fault here, but I got an invitation here that this thing is going to take place at 1215 Reed Road. So we need to be abreast and cognizant of aware of all the board action that the board makes. We've changed that road to Garrett. So I know the mayor announced it, but I don't need to be getting no invitation, nor do my constituents with the wrong information. And my last comment is, do we have anybody from Starkville News here tonight? Okay, you here. Let me just say, your newspaper, and I have some constituents also, and I have that mentioned this to me. You have a segment in the newspaper about letters to the editor, and as a public official and as a citizen, if letters are submitted to the editor, it is my opinion. You can pass it on to your boss. I know you don't make the decisions down there, but it is my opinion that those letters should be published in a very timely manner. Now, if the letter is not going to be published, then the sender needs to be informed as to why it is not going to be published without the sender having to call and inquire a multitude of times about that. And certainly, Mr. Reporter, I would like to have a copy of your written policy on letters to the editor. This is a local newspaper, and if you're going to have a category about letters to the editor, then it needs to be open to those who send it in. If you're not going to publish it, then the sender needs to be made aware of that. So this is my personal plea and appeal to you as an employee and a representative of the Starkville Daily News. Mr. Mayor, you have the floor.
Do we have any further comments from the members of the board? Any further comments? Alderman Sistro.
I'd just like to say that Alderman Perkins and Alderman Vaughn have raised some very reasonable issues at their end of the table. We will talk about fund balance, and we will talk about how much flexibility we have in our budget this year as opposed to maybe some prior years when there was more flexibility in the budget. But I think I'll save those comments until we're actually at that point in our meeting where we're talking about the budget.
Do we have any further comments from the members of the board? Any further comments from the members of the board? Any further comments? Seeing none, we'll move to citizen comments. At this time, any citizen wishing to make comments may do so by coming forward, introducing yourself, and you'll be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Greeting to the mayor and board. My name is Alvin Turner, Ward 7. I would like to acknowledge the vice mayor and Alderman Vaughn.
Mr. Turner.
The citizens, first, I talked to Mr. Moore, George Moore, that brought our concern about some jobs. He couldn't make tonight's meeting, but we're still working on that, Mr. Carver, and we will bring that information to you. The tent across from the electric department, it caught a lot of people by surprise, and you would like an understanding of what went wrong, why. The citizens also feel like that the 3 feet law with the bicycles, on game day it can get real crowded around here, and we would just like to, if the chief and the sheriff could maybe the next meeting give us their feels on you have a crowded town, but then you have to have 3 feet allotment for bikers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Do we have any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments?
Nobody else have anything, I'll come forward and take up 6 minutes. Hello, my name is Dorothy Isaac, as you all know, and to my Alderman, Broad Perkins, and to Mr. Henry Barnes, and to all of you, I would just like to say, coming back again, I'm gonna ask the same question again, do we need a curfew? You go out, it may not be crimes you see being committed, but I tell you, when it comes to your doorstep, you understand. We still have youth walking the road. I can go out of town and come back in sometime late at night. We have youth, little youth, walking the road. We need to have some kind of curfew here in Starkville. I'm just coming this time to tell you again, it's another thing. And I would like to also talk about, the ditch on Carver Drive. You could, please, I'm asking each and every one of you. We keep talking about this ditch. Citizens is over there on Carver Drive. We got citizens that are voting citizens. Please, pay attention to what's being said. That's a health hazard over there. With all that garbage and all that rubbish and everything that you smell over there, it's a health hazard. If you're not gonna do it, please, just close the road off. Do it like that. Just close the road off and say, well, we're not gonna do it, we're not even gonna pay attention to it. Please, I'm asking that before you please put a final vote or whatever you do into the municipal compact. And like I say, I'm not against it. I just want to see something else done first before we move into that phrase. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Isaac. Do we have any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Do we have any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Seeing none, we'll move to public appearances. And our first appearance scheduled for tonight is by Parks Director Matthew Wright and Chairman of the Parks Commission, Dan Moreland.
Well, they say no news is good news, so we don't have a whole lot to talk about, other than this is required every 3 months, and we fulfilling the requirement. As y'all have in your packets, the financial report, and I'd just like to touch on some of the activities that we had. I think most everybody was at the park on the 4th of July. We had an estimate of about 8,000 people at the park and in the surrounding things. This is good, but I sure do hate to see that money go up and pop and be gone, but it seems like everybody enjoys it, so that's what we're going to do. Got some pictures in here showing some of the events, and we had, for the first time, worked with MSU on a golf camp, and we wanted to do this to introduce kids to sports that they would normally not participate in. I talked to Mr. Perkins and Mr. Bond. They personally, Mr. Bond, I know, went door to door trying to get kids to come, and we ended up with about 30 per day, and it was hot, and but it gave them something to do. The same 30 was there every day. It wasn't just basically, that, and I'm not coming back. So I think they all enjoyed that. And we'd like to thank MSU for their putting on the helping with the thing. Also, from time to time, and in most places, the county and the city both help fund the parks. Because we got kind of unique situation with a 2%. They do fund it, but not directly from the treasurer of the county. So we got with the Board of Supervisors and worked out a deal where they built a road, and you can see the pictures in here of Azalea Road extension on down to the park. Now, so you can come in from Highway 25, come by down Azalea Road, turn in, and you can be at the back of the softball fields across to the soccer fields. That's going to give us a lot more parking, and it should alleviate some of the traffic coming out into Lynn Lane. And of course, if any of you was there at the 4th of July thing, it was about an hour getting out of the park. But and let's see what we got here. The pools, we're going to close the pools at the end this coming Saturday. That's what we've always done when school starts. Participation drops off. We're still working on the splash pad that we're going to put in. And You notice our money is kind of tight on the end, and it's that way every July because of all the activities we have. That's the most expenditures on lifeguards. And I will say that we cut the lifeguards probably salaries that was paid 4 years ago is probably a third of what they're paid now. Because we took a good look at what I think, kind of like Alderman Perkins said a while ago, we took a long look at some of our personnel, and when you have 10 lifeguards to see for 2 kids, to me, that's a little bit too much. So we go strictly by what Red Cross says we have to do, and we have cut that down to where the pools is not the burden that they used to be. The parks, I think they're in good shape. I think they're in better shape than they've ever been. Matthew, when he does come to work, he does a real good job, and we are lucky to have him. He went on a trip up to Alaska here not long last week, and I was hoping he'd kind of be in one of them bear attacks, but he wasn't, so we back stuck with him. But he does, y'all don't know what all he does. He does a good job. He feels, and this is one of his faults, he feels 90% of the questions that's asked at the park down here, and you can't, that's one of his faults. He's supposed to do like everybody else, push it off on somebody else.
Isn't his time up, Mayor?
But if y'all got any questions, we'll entertain any questions that you have. Yes.
First of all, I'd like to thank y'all for all that y'all do for the city of Starkville and the park of recreation. It's not a time that I call Matt. If he don't answer, he don't return my call. And I thank y'all for what all y'all doing for J.L. King and the whole city. You're keeping them busy. You're trying everything to keep these kids busy, trying to change their mind concept. And I just wish we could have got the attendance camp in before school started, but we didn't make it. But thank y'all so much.
Another thing I forgot to mention about J.L. King, we're changing the lights at the softball field and baseball field over there. The old ones, very few of them work, and they're the old variety, and it takes more to run those, that one field, electricity, than it does a fourplex down at the sports thing. So that's in the making. We're going to have new poles and new lights over there. So the park's coming. It looks good over there. I like it. And we just want y'all to help, and we appreciate y'all letting us run the parks. And we've done it for more years than I'd like to admit, but we appreciate it. There's no questions.
I have some.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, and then I have a couple of comments. You mentioned that the county helped with the road that was built out at the entrance that will come off Azalea Lane. Do y'all have any statistics about how many people from the county use the parks? Do y'all break down usage between county and city?
We do. We have it's just kind of a survey purpose on our registration forms. If they play any type of youth sport, we ask them to check if they live in the city or county. I can go back and look specifically, but off the top of my head, I would say 20% would participate in the county.
Okay. And I want to commend Matthew and the Parks Board for working closely with the residents of Azalea Lane as they built that road and have an additional entrance into the park. I'm sure none of us would really enjoy having the increased traffic that they're going to have on their street, but y'all have been very proactive in dealing with that and have worked very well with the residents of that street. And I applaud you for taking that proactive stance and working with those people. And I also applaud you for innovative programming. The golf program was a great idea. And I'm glad to see y'all moving forward in great ways for the parks.
If we could ever figure out how to cook those golfs, I think they would really take off, but we haven't done that yet. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public appearance is by Dylan Carges of the City Beautification Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to provide y'all with a package from the Beautification Committee. We have a small report just to summarize our activities for the year that didn't make it to your packages. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the extension of the use of the matching funds last year, and you rolled the possibility of matching for beautification projects up to $15,000 for the use of this this fiscal year, and trying to wrap things up for this fiscal year, and so a timely time to report back to you on the activities. This will be the guidepost that I use just to make things quick and simple, and I won't waste too much of your time. This is an outline of what projects we took on, who the other partners were, and what we have accomplished, and what we see coming to fruition before the end of this year. The beautification committee worked diligently at the beginning of the fiscal year last year to build collaboration and partnerships throughout the community to fulfill that $15,000 matching commitment by the city. We did a great job, and within a month's time, I think we had commitments of that match. As you look down on the donated funds on page 6, the Starkville Visitors and Conventions Council gave $6,000. Starkville Main Street Association another $5,000. The Starkville Area Arts Council $1,000. Town and Country Garden Club $2,500. Kiwanis and independent and private donations up to $2,500 more. These all came to us as partnerships, not just blank checks, but with proactive partners that had goals in mind for the betterment of the whole community, and that's how we see that we've really had some great success. That each one of these major contributors took on sort of the lead role as designer, as project manager for specific projects. The project focus is there on underneath the same passage on page 6, with wayfinding signage being led by the Visitors Convention Council, the downtown landscaping led by Main Street Association, the market mural that's now about halfway finished. We have one color up, and we're working out some specs for some color matching for a color background. That was funded by the Starkville Area Arts Council. Town and Country has been doing landscape at Hollis Creek and has done improvements around downtown with color and annual planning, and has also been working to reassign some of the landscaping that was pulled off of Main Street to the market and back to the annex for the other courthouse as well. The Kiwanis Club has given in good faith. But I would really like to thank y'all for the opportunity that money has offered. And it's been a little bit of a rough road from the beautification standpoint with some of the controversy for landscaping and whatnot. But there has been significant and positive change, and it's been a very proactive stance by the city to offer this opportunity and to build some great inroads with the other organizations around town and even individuals to just get people more engaged and to raise the bar for the aesthetics and I guess the perception of the town from visitors and from all our citizens and constituents that y'all serve. I say that this is also timely as you approach budgeting time of year, and I know things are tight. This money went far, and we see other projects coming to fruition by this fiscal year's end. And I just would ask you to consider either matching what was allotted this year for matching funds, or to some level, because even a little bit, it seems like a lot for beautification, but there's a lot of partnerships, there's a lot of community will, and there's the perspective from outsiders and tourism that really gets impacted by the types of projects that we've been able to do this year. And this has set a precedent that we haven't been able to be sort of proactive in sort of bricks and mortar projects before. And this, I think, has created some momentum that will be carried on, and people will continue, and organizations will continue to step up and lead the way for projects and also with money. So please consider whatever may be possible for this coming year in the budget. But if there's any questions, I'm here to speak to them. But otherwise, this is your guidebook for what we've done this year. And I appreciate the hard work of the committee and Jeremy Murdoch especially for putting this package together. We were waiting on some last minute questions and answers to be filled so we could get this to you today. So.
Do we have any questions or comments from Mr. Carter?
I've got a comment. I want to just publicly state that this process, when it first began during the last administration, was a thanks to Milo and Richard Mullinax and Clyde Williams and several others that recognized the need for there to be increased focus on beautification efforts across the city. And I think the fact that just in a few short years it's morphed into something that within one calendar year has been able to work on and spend and gather money through sponsorships and partnerships, upwards of $30,000 in very tangible projects that meet the goals set forth even prior to Main Street getting here, even prior to placemakers getting here. And looking at that and having the forethought to do it, I commend this committee for doing it, because it hasn't been easy, and Dylan knows that, and we've graced the papers of every paper in the that's in the area because of decisions that were made that were tough at the time. They weren't popular at the time, but yet here we are 8-10 months removed from that, and we're finding success in it. And so this document is a testament to that, and I appreciate their work on this, because as of yesterday afternoon, we were looking at a digital copy of this, and here we are, today with this type of work. And I think the wayfinding signage is probably the biggest part that is yet to be seen. We have the money for it, and I think we'll have immediate impacts because we're going through that process on campus as well as we are here. And I think it will be it will really begin to develop all the ideas that were questioned so much during all the charrettes that we've recently had. So I really appreciate this, Dylan. Thank you.
Well, and I, if I can just readdress for 1 second, I think personally, from sort of a artist and designer, I've seen a lot of things sort of shift in a very positive way and a sort of an embrace when we walked around to talk to business and civic leaders. There was hardly a hedge on, yes, I'd like to make the city better. I'd like it to look better. I'd like more people to come here. I'd like to generate more people to step up and give as well. And I know there's some hard decisions from the budgeting standpoint. A lot of things need to be done, but $15,000 this year has made a dramatic impact, and would continue to do so. And again, that small investment doubles because I think we have the people in the wings and the support of the community to step up and make those things happen. I've had a little bit of a trouble this year trying to figure out what was committee work and what wasn't with the community market and the Arts Council business. The push for public arts in the community has been slow but steady, and I think that will grow, and I think it will have a major impact, and future monies would certainly speak to that and help support that. But thank you, Mayor.
Do we have any further questions or comments from members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Thank you. All right, that will conclude our public appearances for the evening and carry us to public hearings. And we have two public hearings scheduled tonight. The first is the first public hearing on the City of Starkville proposed municipal budget for fiscal year 2012. Alderman Sistrunk, would you like to introduce?
I will, and there is in the electronic packet a printed copy, line item copy of the budget. There's also tapped later in the evening presentation about the general fund budget, which is the one that most people are interested in because it directly impacts your taxes. I would like to say that we were very mindful of some of the issues that Mr. Perkins and Mr. Vaughn mentioned earlier about the county having raised taxes through the hospital bond issue, the separate school district having raised taxes through their bond issue, and the fact that we are very likely going to ask the voters of the city of Starkville about building municipal facilities, which would require a bond issue. As a result, we have a very lean budget, and we are not proposing a tax increase with the city of Starkville ad valorem taxes or property taxes. We are trying very hard to live within our means. That means that there are scarce resources, many needs, and few dollars. Our department heads have worked diligently, not just this year, but over the years that this board has been seated, to keep their budgets relatively flat. As a result, we have eliminated a lot of the areas where we might look for special funds for special projects. One area that you would sometimes see were vacant positions. With those vacant positions eliminated, and we've pretty much eliminated all vacant positions other than just those related to the timing of getting people hired, we just don't, we have a very lean budget. I don't know another way to say it. We have a very lean budget and scarce resources. But once again, the department heads have come through. We have a balanced budget. The city clerk's office has gotten that distilled to paper, and the budget committee has looked at it and made recommendations for where to go forward. We'll take these comments and then make adjustments. Would you like for me to go ahead and do this presentation at this point in time? While Joel's getting that ready, part of this is from the presentation that we had last year, and one of the first things to talk about is what exactly is a budget. And it's really nothing more than a policy and planning document. Talks about where we're going to spend our dollars going forward, gives our department heads some guidance as to where we expect them to spend their dollars, and it's a way for us to communicate with the public about how we're going to handle the dollars that you entrust to us. Our decisions about the budget are infused by these areas that we identified as key areas when we had our strategic plan meeting at the beginning of our term on the board. We developed a mission statement. We identified some city services that we as a group, and it depended on which day as to who was in that group, but we as a group identified some city services that we wanted to look at going forward. Comprehensive planning and land use was an important issue. Image, the type things that Dylan spoke about a few minutes ago, were important. Infrastructure, the drainage, street overlay, capital improvements, those sorts of things. Municipal complex, and then regional cooperation with the county and the university. As a result of those meetings, we came out with this mission statement, and Mr. Vaughn read it earlier tonight. It's our intent to be fiscally responsible with the resources that we've been entrusted with. Last year's budget, we had a tax increase partially because of or primarily really, because of the quadrennial revaluation of properties that's legislated. Properties were revalued. We actually voted for a small increase in the city millage rate, 0.45 mils. Last year we held our budget flat to fiscal year 10, and we were able to meet the strategic plan goals that you see listed up there. We added to our ending fund balance. When this board was seated, we had a general fund balance of $187,000. To put that in some perspective, the city of Smithville, Mississippi, who had the tornado some months ago, they've recently spent through their reserves, their fund balance, and they're waiting on insurance settlements and FEMA monies, those sorts of things. Their fund balance was $200,000. When we were seated, our fund balance was less than that. We began equipping and staffing Fire Station 5. We've agreed to update the software in the city clerk's office. We did establish the IT department. We've added an assistant city planner. We've begun participation again in the Mississippi Main Street program, and we have begun a smart code program, which we think will help us with development. In fiscal year 12, again, we were very mindful of the tax increases that have gone on and any tax increase that might come along with municipal buildings. So these were the three areas that we were able to address in the proposed budget. We'll hear a presentation later tonight about a master plan for municipal facilities. We anticipate funding those constructions. You'll hear more about that tonight too. We're continuing to address image in the city with the proposal for funding a redevelopment authority. Those funds will show up as a line item within the budget, and we're continuing our participation in the Main Street program. We also recognize that within city services, one of our most important things that we need to address is employee retention. We are starting to see the results of 3 years of flat budgets, that sort of thing. So that was another area that we attempted to address. This budget doesn't have a property tax increase in it. There are small increases in spending. They're all funded by the organic growth within the community, just additional building, people moving into the community, increase in sales taxes, and some decreases in spending. We actually cut spending in some areas, one that's near and dear to Mr. Perkins' heart, external contributions. So we do have an application process, and we will address who gets those limited external contributions later. Some of the things that we were faced with was a health insurance increase this year. PERS has dictated that we have an additional employer contribution beginning, I think, in January of this year. They increased the employee contribution last year as well. We're going to continue our study on the potential expansion of South Montgomery. We've taken on a third cemetery that requires maintenance. We are looking at establishing a redevelopment authority, expanding Main Street, and we are proposing a pay increase that would become effective January 1st of this year. What's not in this budget, or isn't fully funded in this budget, is probably every bit as important as what is in this budget. There are many city services that we're not beginning to touch. A lot of them are equipment needs, everything from computers and servers and things that make us function well from an IT perspective to fire trucks that are going to be needed in the next short period of time. There are personnel needs within various departments that are just on hold until we have additional monies to pay for them. Technology needs, we are gradually, by having our IT department, we're beginning to address some of those, but there's still many to address. One primary one being our website and making it more interactive and making it an area where that can be your first point of contact with the city. Document preservation. We'll talk about municipal complex later on, but we have documents stored in areas that I don't believe anybody would recognize as adequate. And these are important documents for everything from the police to city records, and the loss of any of those could be devastating to us as a city and to individuals who needed access to those records. We obviously are not funding infrastructure at a level that any of us would like to. This is an area where we got poor marks as a city when we did a citizen satisfaction survey a few years ago. We got high marks in police and fire, and you'll see later on that we spend a lot of money in those areas, but public safety is perhaps our first and foremost charge as a city. We got less high marks in areas with street improvements, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle paths, and we are not nearly funding those at the level that they should be funded at. We're not fully funding the things that will improve our city image, and image is important. Branding the city of Starkville is important. Marketing the city of Starkville is important. People talk about governments creating jobs. Governments don't create jobs. We grow government when we do that. But governments create environments in which businesses want to create jobs, and that's part of our image, and part of what we hope to address in someday funding those kind of programs. This is a graph of our fiscal year 12 source of funds. It's eliminates pass-through funds, which are things like the daycare grant that we get that we turn around and give to the Brick Fire Project. It eliminates funds that we hold in trust, things that we pass on to the state for fines and that sort of thing. You'll notice that, and I'm nearsighted, so I have to flip back and forth here. You'll notice that just over a fourth of our funds come from general property taxes. As a city, we have been reluctant to pay for the services that we say that we want by paying for them with property taxes. Almost 40% of our revenues come from sales taxes. Licenses and permits are a small part of it. We get a small portion of the taxes that we pay to the county back in the form of a road and bridge tax or fund. So about 4% of our budget comes back to us from the county. We get a little bit of money from an interlocal agreement that we have with Mississippi State University where they pay for fire protection. We get monies from fines and fees, about 4%. Money's transferred from other agencies, and that's everybody from TVA on to the cable company, that sort of thing. And then we have the ubiquitous other, which is about 10% of our total budget. What we use those monies for are first and foremost public safety, fire and police. That's a little over half of our operating budget. If you'll flip back, or if you'll think back to that chart about the sources and uses of funds, we don't even collect enough in property taxes to pay for our public safety needs. The other things that you see there, about 6% of our money goes to parks, about 8% of our money goes to streets and capital projects. The court system, about 3%. Debt service, which essentially is street projects because a lot of that is bonds for street improvements, about 7%. Engineering, 1%. Planning and building, 3%. General government, 10%. And then other, which would include things like cemetery maintenance, 3%. And now I'm going to take my moment here to do a little consumer education. We talk about how much we pay in taxes, and this next graph will show you where your 2011 tax dollar went. 15% of it came to the city, 38% of it went to the county, and 47% of it went to city schools. So when you pay your tax bill, don't blame it all on the city. We only get about 15% of your tax bill. And this next graph will show you how we compare in terms of what we're willing to pay for with ad valorem tax dollars or property tax dollars to the 25 largest cities and towns in the state of Mississippi, ranging from Natchez to Jackson. Starkville is about 2/3 of the way down there, or you can look for the lowest number on the chart, either one. Starkville is at 20 mills. The city of Ridgeland, which has a much higher property base and a much higher sales tax base, is slightly ahead of Starkville at 20.03, and the numbers just go up from there. We have a very low property tax base. And that's one of the reasons that we'll have some lively discussion in a few minutes, I'm sure, about where we spend our dollars. Rare resources, scarce resources, lots of needs. Thank you.
Do we have any questions or comments from the members of the board? Alderman Dumas.
Your comment, don't collect enough in property tax to cover public safety is a very powerful statement to me. Do we know, is there any comparison of how we compare?
I have not looked at other cities, but I've not looked at other cities.
From a public administration standpoint, do we have an understanding of what's typically the case and the percentage of revenue coming from ad valorem versus sales tax?
I did start to look, and it varies from community to community, but I don't have any. I will look for some additional information on that for you.
Do we have any further questions or comments from the members of the board?
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
Mr. Mayor, let me just mention one thing that the Vice Mayor didn't mention on the pay raise for the employees. She can correct me because I was not able to attend the last meeting. She'll tell me if I am incorrect. I think the last understanding of the pay increase will be 3% across the board. That's my first comment. Is that correct, Vice Mayor?
That's correct.
Effective, that's 3% across the board to all city employees except those on probation.
That's also correct.
Okay,
And effective January 1st,
of 2012.
12, yes.
Mr. Mayor, what I want to add, let me just kind of continue to highlight this matter because it's very important to me. I am of the strong opinion that we need to redefine our priorities for the city. And I'm just going to briefly restate that I think that the capital improvement projects line should be increased significantly. According to the information I've been provided with, we only, being the city, has $200,000 in new money for the capital improvements for this upcoming fiscal year. I have been informed and advised that $200,000 is to cover capital improvement, including but not limited to street overlay and drainage. We cannot get APAC into this city and do an effective job for $200,000 alone, and we cannot spend the whole $200,000 just on street overlay. These drainage projects have been outstanding for a number of years. The Carver Drive ditch has been outstanding for decades. We need to have some finality to that particular project along with other drainage projects. I think that we should relook the ending fund balance. As I stated earlier, it's my recollection that it's somewhere in the range of $730,000 to $750,000. I think that is just a very high amount in terms of our millage rate, in terms of the revenue that we have. You know, it's good to conserve money, but at the same time, we have recurring needs in the city that needs to be taken care of, and we will not be able to do that with that high ending fund balance. What that high ending fund balance is, it pushes the board to look at having to increase the millage rate. Now, there are a couple of projects that I think that are not as outstanding as the Carver Drive ditch in the budget, and no disrespect to the proponents of those. And those two projects are, one, we have a new line item in there for the mayor's project. No disrespect to his request. I'm just pointing out that that is just a new line item of $30,000. You know, of course, you know, again, we have the Carver Drive ditch. I mean, that should be given consideration. And no disrespect to the next matter I mentioned is the South Montgomery project for right-of-way study and right-of-way acquisition. There's $40,000 in the budget for that. So it all boils down to how we want to prioritize and what we want to support. And of course, you know, I'm going to have to really say that this capital improvement is my top priority for the city of Starkville. The capital improvement, the drainage, the street overlay, that is my number one priority. I have, you know, voted for the betterment of our roads and streets and drainage since I've been on the board. I'm going to continue to support that. So, I mean, those matters are my number one priority. And I think, if we come up with that as a priority, then we can find ways to support it. So hopefully we can relook this budget. I am of the opinion, I supported the employee pay raise in the budget process because I think that is needed. But and certainly, I think we need to just go back to the table, and this is the first public hearing tonight, and find some type of ways that we can get these drainage projects done, and we need to let these feds know, and I talked to Mr. Brule about it, to see where we are with the feds. We've already approved this study, this HLA, whatever you call it. We need to find out where we stand on that. We need to get a report on that. And I think we need to put some more money into that, substantial amount of money in that category. I have been advised by the budget chair that we need an additional $200,000 to finish the Carver Drive ditch. That was information that she reported that she got from the city engineer. We have $50,000 already earmarked for that project that's been earlier approved by the board this year, so we need an additional $200 to finish it. Hopefully we can move in that direction. So these are some of the things that I like to see changed and modified, Mr. Mayor, to the budget before final approval. I yield the floor.
Any further questions or comments, Alderman Dumas?
For the record, what is the ending fund recommendation from our bond council?
May I talk
You
about, may I talk about ending fund? And before I talk about it, fund balance, may I speak just for a second about the capital improvements line? There is $200,000 of new money in that number. The total number is actually $405,000. Part of that is considered, or is there in anticipation of not finishing Pat Station Road this year and having to pay that out of next year's budget. I've spoken with the city engineer, and it's very likely that we will finish Pat Station Road this year, which will essentially give us $405,000 in our capital budget for next year. We won't reach into next year's budget to finish that project. Ending fund, let me first say that the budget focuses on projecting and planning for revenues and expenditures for the services provided by the city. And we use a one-year budget cycle, so we look at what we're going to be spending over a one-year budget cycle. The fund balance is a snapshot amount. It is an amount that would change in real time, and it simply reflects the difference between our assets and liabilities, and will vary with the restrictions on the use of those funds. And not to get too much into accounting 101, or 501 if it's governmental accounting, but it is an accounting construct, and fund balance does not mean available cash. It's not the same number. We have a tendency to think of it as a savings account, and that's similar, but there is a distinction, much like for the attorneys here and out in the audience. There's a difference between being innocent and being not guilty. So they're similar but different. That fund balance can be restricted, or it could be non-spendable. For instance, inventory will contribute to your fund balance, but it is not a spendable item. The reasons that you need to maintain a positive fund balance are many. One is because we are budgeting, and we have cash flow variations within the year. Our money doesn't all come in equal amounts throughout the year. It doesn't go out in equal amounts throughout the year. So having a positive fund balance allows us to accommodate those variations in our cash flow. It also is the best chance we have to do multi-year budgeting, especially for large capital projects like a fire truck. And when we talk about a fire truck, we talk about something that impacts your insurance rates because it impacts our fire code rating. It also is very expensive, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's very difficult for us to build that into a single budget, and if those kinds of dollars are not available, and our ending fund balance would not give us that much flexibility right now, but without that positive fund balance, we're going to have to be much more creative in how we fund those large capital expenditures. It impacts our ability to borrow, which is Mr. Dumas's question there. It impacts our bond rating. It also allows us to take advantage of opportunities. If there's a grant that requires a matching amount, having a positive ending fund balance, having a positive fund balance allows us to take advantage of those opportunities. It allows us to account for emergencies too, when there's something that comes up that we simply didn't anticipate. Having said all that, I was talking to a friend about this, and she gave me the very best reason of all for having a positive ending fund balance, and that was so that we didn't end up like the federal government.
Well, that's an excellent point, because it should be noted that when we entered this term with a $187,000 ending fund balance and made a bond issue, we were rated by Moody's, which is one of the investment services that provides bond ratings, and we were in serious danger of getting a credit rating downgrade. They did not downgrade our credit at that point in time, but they gave us a negative outlook. And the specific criticism that we were given is if you don't get your ending fund balance up, your credit will be downgraded as a city.
And there are,
I just wanted to follow up on that and kind of what you were saying too about the cash flow issues that we have, because people pay their, taxes
Yes.
at a certain time of year,
Yes.
and so we'll get it in a big burst instead of
Yes.
steadily throughout the year.
Yes.
And so along those lines, since we have the city clerk here and Miss Debbie, our accountant, in the audience, I wanted to ask, weren't there months back when our in-fund balance was very low where we were literally in the red for a month or two at a time?
yes. Now, how you set that in, how you set what's an adequate amount for an ending fund balance is ultimately a policy decision for the board. It could be a percentage of your general fund budget, it could be a target amount or range, it could be based on what your planned uses for that ending fund balance is. I don't know that our bond attorneys would make a recommendation about what that amount needs to be. In conversations with our accountant, with our auditing firm, they have suggested a number, and you correct me if I'm wrong, 850,000 to a bit more than that.
Well, he said anywhere from the 600,000 up to the 800,000.
And I think the last time I talked to him, he used 850. But it is very much a policy decision for the board. But there are a world of reasons that you need to maintain a positive fund balance. That's not to minimize our need for monies for projects, but it is also an important part of what we do.
Do we have any further questions or comments by the members of the board? Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move to the citizen comment portion of the public hearing, and we will deviate a little bit from the standard practice, since this is the first public hearing, and it's a little different matter than some of the matters we usually take up. Rather than hearing for and against, because I would imagine most of you probably haven't formed a sound opinion as to whether you feel in favor of the budget proposal or against it. We'll just hear a maximum of 30 minutes of 3-minute comments. So we'll handle this much the same way we handle a normal citizen comment period. Anyone wishing to make comments on tonight's budget presentation and discussion may do so by coming forward, introducing yourself, and you'll be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. And we'll do that until either no one wishes to speak anymore or we have elapsed 30 minutes.
Greeting to the mayor and board. My name is Alvin. When you're in the beauty shop and barber shop, you catch up on a whole lot of what the city needs to do. We have a few things that concern the taxpayer. We have Northside Drive. It has a hill in it. Anyone that's at the bottom of the hill, if someone jumped the hill, they could collide because you have nowhere to go. North Montgomery. We just have one store on the end. People are scared to go to the store because no sidewalk to get from Board Town to the store. Either the sidewalk is skipping to try to get from Board Town to 182. 182 is very dangerous to pedestrians and anyone else because of the patching. And if you have fail on that asphalt, it hurts. Patching, it lasts for a little while, but knock it back out. So those are some concerns that need to take, interest in.
Do we have any further citizen comments? Any further comments on the budget proposal?
Hi, Diane Wall, and I'm here just as an individual. I was curious, when will we be hearing about the outside donations or funding?
They're in this printed packet, and if you'll hang around for a minute, I'll show you where they are in the budget. And it will take me a minute to find it, so.
Okay, thank you.
They're scattered throughout it.
They're scattered throughout?
Scattered throughout the budget document.
Because I didn't think I saw the library listed.
It's in there at the same funding level it was last year.
I skimmed it too fast.
Do we have any
I'm
further?
interested in the job.
Do we have any further public comments? Any further public comments? Any further public comments on the budget presentation? Seeing none, we'll move to our next, are there any further comments from the members of the board before we do move on? Alderman Corey.
For the citizens that are not only here, but maybe will watch this tomorrow or maybe read about it at home, will a copy of this be available on the website?
It will.
Is it?
Any further comments from the members of the board? Do we have any further comments from the members of the board? Seeing none, we'll move to our second public hearing, which is indeed the third public hearing on the potential amendment to the solid waste ordinance 2010-3. Alderman Parker, would you like to introduce?
I would like to only highlight the changes that we made from the last public meeting, which are, we have added a definition for stumps, logs, and tree trunks. We have changed the pages are numbered. And on page 10, under prohibited acts, section 8, item K, for dead animals over 10 pounds to be placed for collection by the city or its contractors. So no dead animals over 10 pounds. The city will not pick up any dead animals that are over 10 pounds, which hopefully takes care of some of the mice and other issues that people may have. And we have changed we continued to make sure we had the name of the department correct. And on page 13, under certain waste unsuitable for collection, item A, dead animals, animal dressings, or animal manure in excess of 10 pounds and/or not capable of being secured within the city-approved plastic refuge bags. So you must fit anything you want to be picked up inside the black trash bag that the city gives you. Those were the changes that we made from the last public hearing.
Any questions or comments on the potential amendment to the sanitation ordinance?
Thank you.
Alderman Dumas says thank you. Any questions or comments on the potential sanitation ordinance from the members of the board? Any questions or comments from the members of the board? Seeing none, we'll move into the public comment portion of the public hearing. And we will keep with standard practice on this one because I think by now everyone has had an opportunity to form an opinion on this subject. We will alternate hearing from speakers for the proposed amendment and speakers against the proposed amendment, each person having a maximum of 3 minutes to make their comments and each side having a maximum total of 15 minutes. We will carry that exercise out until both sides have exhausted their 15 minutes or until no one else wishes to speak. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed amendment? Oh.
I need to come all the way up there.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I'm Alan Vernon, Ward 2, cause of some of the problems. The proposed amended document, which you'll consider tonight, is a better document than the one that replaces. Is it a perfect document? No, it is not. Does that mean that I will ask you to revisit it at some future date? Probably. But at this point, I would just like to say thank you to the members of the board for the consideration which they have shown my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berman. Is there anyone wishing to speak against the proposed changes?
Good evening again. My name is Alvin, and as I stated at the last meeting, I'm my mother's oldest child, 51 years old. My baby brother is the baby of the family, and we know him real well. We don't want nothing to happen to him. He can't lie to his mom. He can't lie to his wife. He can't lie to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed amendment to the sanitation ordinance?
Diane Wall, and I'll be very brief. Thank you, particularly about the issue of when a bird dies on my property, I can now put it in the trash, or those rodents, if we don't have them. Thank you very much for responding to that issue.
Is there anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed sanitation ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak against? Anyone now wishing to speak against? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed sanitation ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor? Anyone now wishing to speak for, against, or indifferent to the proposed sanitation ordinance amendment? Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Seeing no one, that will conclude the public comment portion of the public hearing, and we will move back into comments by the members of the board. Are there any concluding comments by the members of the board? Any concluding comments? All right. Seeing none, that will conclude this public hearing, and, oh, did you have a comment?
The other thing we changed was the time.
Penalty.
The penalty and the time for, you're not, there's no chance you could be fined if you put it out after 7 a.m. There's a chance it wouldn't be picked up, but there's no chance you could be fined
And instead, there's a fine if you leave it out
after sunset.
Any further comments by the members of the board? Any further concluding comments by the members of the board? Seeing none, that will conclude this, the third public hearing on the sanitation ordinance amendment. And without objection, I'm going to move us into brief recess. Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, stand in recess. Meeting will now come back to order. Next order of business is a report from the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee.
Mayor, we now that the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee approved of the changes that we had just made, and that's pretty much we went over the new ordinance at our last meeting, and that was our primary goal and objective. We do still have the day in the park that is scheduled for September the October the
November.
22nd, I think. That's plenty of time, so we'll have that information upcoming.
Any further report?
That's pretty much it.
All right, that will take us to the consideration of amending the solid waste ordinance 2010-3. Discussion.
Mayor, I move approval of the proposed changes to the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee's bylaws. Mayor, I move approval of amending the Solid Waste Ordinance 2010-3 and the City of Starkville Code of Ordinances, Chapter 54, to provide for a nomenclature change, changing rubbish requirements, and other related matters.
Alderman Parker has made a motion to amend the solid waste ordinance 2010-3 and the City of Starkville Code of Ordinances, Chapter 54, to provide for a nomenclature change, change in the rubbish requirements, and other related matters as presented. Alderman Parker, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Sistrunk. Alderman Parker, do you wish to speak on the merits?
I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
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 All right, I'm going to divide it. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. I have it with 4 in favor, 2 against. This measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of authorizing the funds to extend the Pecan Road overlay to include the full length of the street.
Mayor, might be recognized.
You may.
Ms. Spruill, would you come down for a few minutes? Let me just have some dialogue with you, and I kind of got a feel of how this is going to go. Let me just have this discussion with you, and Ms. Kemp, no disrespect to you, since Ms. Spruill is the liaison of the board. Ms. Spruill, just very briefly, I was approached by one of my constituents as I was coming out of a downtown business just the other day, and you recall the conversation because I directed the call to contact you, but I was informed during this overlay period that there was 3 streets that would be paved in Ward 6. And I'm not going to try to force a vote here because I don't expect passage, okay, unless somebody just want to make the motion second, and I'll support it. But it's just more or less a discussion here, and I think I'm reading the room right here. But nevertheless, the constituent approached me about this road, but I was informed by staff, I think you may have informed me, that there were 3 roads that would be overlaid in Ward 6. There were Chickasaw and Rolling Hills and Pecan Road and Stowood Road. And I know in the past administrations, when we discussed the road, the whole road got overlaid. Now, I saw in the packet where there was some reference to some other streets that were not done as an entirety. And I went back and looked at it after you and I had the conversation, after you got the caller. And of course, and that's a very important area. Of course, all areas in the city are important, but there's some business out there. It's good for the economy, economic development. Because there's a pecan business out there. But when the constituent who lived there asked me, he said, "Well, Alderman Perkins, we only pave half the road." I said, "No way." I said, I was informed that the whole road would be paved. But I went back and looked at the capital improvement plan, and of course, I give this disclaimer all the time. I'm not an engineer, but it has some 500 plus, and I'm a lawyer. I don't read all that stuff. That's what engineers are for. But in the future, what needs to happen is, Ms. Spruill, respectfully, whether it's the engineering department or any other department, let's make sure that the staff comes up here and give us a detailed briefing on what to do. I mean, we get so many tons of paper, within a period of months. And I never got the understanding, and I look at that fine print because I relied upon what staff had told me. So that's why when the constituent asked me that, then I told them that I thought we had approved that, and that was the representation that I had. So certainly I would appreciate if the board would approve that remainder. I think it's $20,000+ and I told the constituent that I would bring it to the board, and I'm bringing it in good faith here tonight. But if you would, if the board doesn't see fit to approve it, then I certainly would like for you and just consult with this, with your staff to see what's the likelihood of the next time we do an overlay, see whether it rises up to get back before the board. But like I said, this is a pecan operation out there. Many citizens use that. And after you told me that, because I was trying to get another road, I went out there and traveled the entire Pecan Road. I called you, I said, oh yeah, Mr. Brewer, that road definitely needs to be done. I commended the staff for selecting it. And then in Stowood, and I see that Stowood got some number plus there, maybe it's gonna be a portion or a fraction or part of it, but I'm making an appeal to the mayor and the board that, that we do need to finish that road. And I'm not fixing to make a big long speech, and I'm not fixing to make a motion. But if the board wants to support it, I'm asking them to support it. But if not, then if I don't get a second on the motion, it's not going to get considered tonight. But in the future, if you just two things in closing, just have your staff, whether it's the engineering or any other department, just make sure that they give us all the specifics and tell us that, well, we're only going to do a third of Geechee Lane, for example, or a fourth of this road. That's all we're going to do, so we'll know what to expect. And because I relied upon that, I'm not faulting anybody. I'm just trying to help my constituents. That's my job. And number two is, if you could just talk to the engineer and he'll make his recommendation, and probably won't do any more roads. So until next year, we certainly may not be able to get APAC next year with $200,000. We may have to skip a year, just like we do employee raises, until we get money. But we'll see what we have to do, and I'm not going to try to forecast the next year. But if you would just get with the engineer, if the board doesn't approve it, and just so and I'll call the constituent back, and they may call you as well. But if you just take that in consideration and do that for me, I would greatly appreciate it.
May I?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me personally
ma'am.
apologize to you, because it was probably a reference, an abbreviated reference on my part, because when you and I talked, I said Pecan Road, and I did say Chickasaw, and I did say Stowood,
Right.
just to name your roads.
Right.
And so I probably should have been much more detailed in my presentation to you, because that did set expectations. And I have talked to staff, and we do need to make sure that our representation doesn't leave anyone surprised at the end of the day. So.
Well taken, Ms. Brewer.
My problem in not representing that appropriately, and I will certainly make sure that we do that differently next time.
Right, this set in good measure, and nothing negative. Thank you for your time.
And if I may, Collier Road was one of those roads that we did halfway a couple of years ago.
Okay,
And it
okay.
did create that same kind of feel about
But
it. So I
with Collier,
understand
we made it really clear, because
Yes.
we made it real
Yes.
clear with Collier we want to do the whole road. And
Right.
we did the chip seal, and, that was clearer at Collier.
Yes.
But thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? Do we have any further discussion? 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 Seeing none. The next matter on the agenda is the presentation and consideration of adopting the City of Starkville Municipal Facilities Master Plan. Discussion. Alderman Dumas.
I've got a presentation to make in regards to this. It's timely we're talking about this with the budget. Obviously, I want to thank Ms. Sistrunk for her work in talking about the strategic plan, the mission statement, and the fact that this board unanimously discussed and talked about and approved the fact that our municipal complex is woefully inadequate for our city services. It does make an impact on our image, and so these are images that we've all seen. We saw them during the town hall meeting just a few short weeks ago, and I'm going through just discussing these from the standpoint of, I think it's best, and I want to make the motion at the end of this, that we, the city, adopt this as an official municipal facilities master plan that we work through. There's different parts of it from the funding mechanism, and we'll get through that, but you all should have a co-binded document of our municipal plan, master plan, and this presentation will follow pretty closely with that. Enough can't be said about the Citizens Municipal Complex Committee. They've worked diligently. Robbie Koblentz is here representing Ward 5, I'm proud to say, and the work of Roy Ruby and all those that are on this list have put in a great deal of time and effort to come up with a plan that is and has been developed by the city and by the citizens. And this is not a board plan, it's not a mayor's plan, it's not a city staff plan. This is a plan developed by the city of Starkville, and to me, that adds great merit to it. The board's municipal complex committee consisted of myself, Alderman Perkins, and Alderman Corey. And Gary Schaefer obviously has shown great diligence and trying to think of the right word here, to taking back over the many iterations of this complex plan and votes and all the other information, but enough can't be said about Gary as well. So what are the issues? We've talked about this. The mayor gracefully talked about this during the during the town hall. But when you look at the issues surrounding the police complex, when you look at the fact over the last 43 years, we've built 5 fire stations, we've built sanitation services, we've built water department facilities, we've built electric department facilities, we've built park facilities, and that list can continue. But we failed to add 1 square foot for police. And I think that's an important gesture to kind of build all this on. 43 years ago, we were half the population we are today. Our police force was less than 20 sworn officers. They had 8,163 square feet to work in. Today we have 53 sworn officers, and that number's growing as of tonight with the consent agenda item of 2 additional sworn officers. And those 55 sworn officers will be working in the same 8,163 square feet. If you look at the detailed work of the Brickley Sargent report that was completed back several years ago with the first iteration of this, that's 31% of the space needed to meet our demands and needs of a sworn force of that size. That's substantial. This building also handles courts. In 1960, our courts handled 3,640 cases. We had 3 employees. In 2010, that number almost tripled to the point of 10,000 cases, 9,873. And we do that with 8 people. There's no consulting space from attorney. There's no prisoner holding space, and that list continues to go as well. Just like the police complex, since 1960, we've not added 1 square foot for our court system. Talking about City Hall, I could find no information about the concrete number of city employees, but if you think of the fact that the city was 1/3 of what its population is today, it's probably fair to assume that we were around 1/3 of the size of city employees. That's 300 employees, so we're less than 100 employees at that time. Since that time, there's been no significant renovation, there's been no added space, but most importantly, that's not dealing directly with the space issue, is the fact that this building does not meet the American with Disabilities Act. This building does not meet fire code. This building does not meet building code. And I put this last point in there not as a joke, but the fact that here we are every day gauging building projects all over this community, and we demand that all buildings meet those requirements. But yet we sit here in a building that doesn't meet any of them. And I think there's a high level of hypocrisy in all of that. So what are the plans? The committee, the Citizens Committee, and Gary have come up with a plan that's in 2 phases, and that's the real part of this master plan, is the fact that these 2 plans will cover a new police complex, a new city hall, annex, the renovations of our current city hall, stormwater retention facilities. It goes back to the ordinances that we require all over the community. We require landscaping in the new phase 1, parking in the phase 1 and phase 2, and then the proper furnishing, fixtures, and equipments that you'll see in line items as we go through with the detailed budget of this. So let's look at phase 1. It is the police complex. Phase 1 is has a square footage of 26,000 square feet. Total construction cost of phase 1 is $8,294,860. I'm sorry, you see the number there. To break that down, when you begin to look at all of this, we've got a land cost of a little over $1 million, stormwater retention's costing us $75,000. The building itself at 26,000 square feet at $200 a square foot, it's $5.28 million. Site preparation and parking, it's a new construction site. They have to prepare the site, and then obviously we have parking requirements of $600,000. Landscaping is $20,000, and then furniture, fixtures, equipment, and architectural fees for the design and the construction aspect of this is $1.25 million. Now, the next part of this, you see the bond issuance, and we'll talk about the bond part of this as the next phase. Typically, I believe we're somewhere in the neighborhood of a bond issuance being about 1% of the total price of the bond. Well, this is roughly 2% of the price of the bond. As you can see, 1% would be $8.2 million. But we don't really know where those numbers are yet because we have not gone to bond council to see. But this gives us the ability with the 2% issuance on that. So that gets us to a total bond amount for Phase 1 at $8.455 million. That's the police complex. We've seen these renderings. This is, you can see Highway 182 on the south, North Jackson, running to the east of the facility. The facility itself is adjacent or addressing the corner. So from a planning side, we can talk about how important that is from setting a real urban tone. The fact that it begins to look at the redevelopment of 182, which is an issue that goes directly to our strategic plan, that goes directly to our image, that goes directly to this being a real zone of needed redevelopment. Stormwater retention offers a prime amenity for this site. The needed property to build this and construct this property actually consists of a piece of property that would be incredibly expensive to build on. Huge hole, 20-foot hole, hill going up the side, so that gives us a perfect opportunity to put the water where it wants to go in the hole. And so at the same time we can do that, we can look at that from a park amenity. So when you look at it in its entirety, from North Jackson to D.L. Connor Drive, and to give you a reference point, that block that's not shown there is actually where the buses sit, and you can see those buses. We have in essence renovated an entire city block, and we've done that with a new facility and with park services that meet the needs and demands of what I feel is needed in a growing downtown. You see public parking, which is the southernmost, and then the parking lot with the white cars is secure parking that has access to Sally Points, or to the Sally Port, secure parking for the police facility, and then it also offers, which is important, access to two major thoroughfares throughout the city, Highway 182 and North Jackson, Highway 389. The next page is just a rendering of this, as you can see how it addresses the corner. Obviously, because all of this has not gone through the detailed design process, all of this is subject to change. But you can see how it will be a landmark facility as you begin to enter the downtown part of Starkville, because this intersection is the downtown intersection that's labeled off of Highway 389 and off of 82. So it's substantial of how this begins to address our downtown area. I apologize, this is shifted. I'll tell you, can you go and open the PDF? 1 second. It's important those line up. Just view it full screen. I want to show this because you can see how it better lines up. There you go. Can you view full screen?
This one has to be cumulative, Eric. I think the next slide like this has to be cumulative. The one where I think it's going to be
There you go. This is where the details are with the budget side of this. Total bond amount as you go back, $8.455 million. Total millage requirements to meet that bond issuance is 3.49 mills. Phase 1 impact on tax payments. You see the home price on the left, and then you can see the annual, monthly, and daily increase of taxes. Not that we pay daily taxes, but this just gives you an idea of what for the price of, for a 200 or 150,000 home, for example, $4 a month. We can have this new facility for the city of Starkville. Obviously, compounding, it's important to note that we understand the impact there, but we also can look at those compared to the needs. Note that this is on the bottom. You can see that this is calculated with homestead exemption. Phase 2, this is courts and city hall. We'll talk a little bit more about the phases as we move through the next part, but Phase 2 is a square footage of 30,800. Total construction cost is $5.955 million. And there's some details in here I'll show on another slide, but basically we're looking at the court space being the area we're sitting in now. The courtroom, Gary can talk about this more from the design side, but the courts would be in the renovated space on the ground level where we sit now. That space and that construction is costing basically 1.2 million. City Hall, which is the annex, which is the part that would be sitting immediately to our west in the parking lot, and the renovated extra space, other space within City Hall would be 3.6 million. Site preparation and parking is $122,000. That's significantly less than the other because this is an existing site. And it does take into fact, I know there were several questions about parking in the town hall, but this does take into effect that there will be parking adjacent, especially ADA parking and other parking alternatives that will be developed in future design aspects. And then you see furniture, fixtures, equipment, and fees, architecture fees, a little over $1 million. Total construction, $5.955 million. There's no bond issuance associated with this because that's a to-be-determined aspect. We'll talk about that later in the timeline, but that's not shown in Phase 2. As you can see, you see where we are now. The longer linear building north and south is current City Hall, and then you can see how the proposed annex would then sit in the immediate parking lot to our west. To show the details of this, you can see first level, second level, third and fourth level layouts. So one being courts, I'm colorblind, so I'm going to go by the number code. You can see how courts would sit immediately adjacent to the court administration, court lobby aspect, judge and prosecutor areas, and then City Hall would be in number 5, and then obviously the needed space for building and the planning department, or the building department, and then circulation areas. So that's, again, subject to change, but the idea of where we're going with City Hall. This is a quick rendering we've all seen of showing the current City Hall and really embracing the idea that this was once a really nice example of Art Deco architecture that we would begin to look at addressing the corner with the same type of architectural detail. The financial aspects of this, again, total construction, $5.955 million. Phase 2 millage requirements of 2.46 mils. And then the increase in that, as you can see, on an annual, monthly, and daily basis. Again, these are calculated with homestead exemption.
Can I ask a question on that? Is it the cumulative, I mean, just like the bottom one with the 300, you know, in the last slide, we were only 2.5 meals and it was $100, and this one it's less, 1
Right.
meal less, but it's
Well,
double.
that's a good question, because this is not cumulative in the fact that it is in addition, $180,000 there. Let me go back to Phase 1. A $300,000 house, $104.70. This 180 does not include that $104.70, but it includes the fact that Phase 1 would increase our mill rate from 20 to 23.49 mills. And so then the multiplier, the factor, you're multiplying that $300,000 by a less mill rate.
More of a meal.
No, a smaller mill rate.
Right.
You're going up a smaller amount, but it's a higher percentage. So you're going up from a total of 25 point. We discussed that at length. But no, it does not include the cumulative aspect.
Those figures are cumulative though, right? That would be based on the total after adding
If we were
3.49.
funding both projects.
Yes, this would be, you would have added the 3.49
No.
on the,
Doesn't. No, the original, my original idea with this was to show a cumulative aspect. So it would show that is an increase from the Phase 1 mill increase. So with Phase 1,
So
your taxes are a tax on a $300,000 home would increase annually $104. That's after Phase 1, which would take our millage from 20 mills to 23.49. If Phase 2 was enacted, our mill would then increase to 25. Our total mill rate would be 25.95 mills. And so your tax rate from what your Phase 1 increase was, which increased by 104. So to answer the question, with both phases, you would be $104.70 plus $180.30.
actually almost 300.
Yeah, and the confusing aspect of this is the fact that you're multiplying by a higher percentage of mill rate. So you're multiplying. I promise you, I can show you the details of this through the spreadsheets. because it is confusing that you're raising a higher percentage, but your multiplication factor is 25.49 mils versus 23.49 mils.
Right.
It's just such a huge, it's just such a big, go, you can go ahead.
If I could just break in for a second, at the, I'll see if I can say this as simply as possible, and that's not easy for me if y'all have not gathered that already, but 1 mil per $100,000 is $10 in taxes. That's the bottom line takeaway. 1 mil per $100,000 of value for a homestead exemption property is $10.
And to take that a step further, 2.46 mils, and one of y'all correct me if I get this wrong, 2.46 mils would always be $24.60 on a $100,000 home. So I think the figure you've got is already accounting for the 3.49 and the 2.46.
I think so too.
This is the difference of increase from mill 1 to mill 2. I mean, from phase 1 to phase 2. We can muddy that up, but I tell you, we've actually got the. Do you have the spreadsheets we worked on with this?
Well, you modified them some, I think, didn't you?
But
Not from the,
Okay,
other
well,
than
we
just
can-
subtracting
we
phase 1 and
can
phase 2.
study that, we can study that. We can
Yeah,
look at those, but-
because it's important from the mill side that, well, to get to the next phase of this. Phase 2 is highly variable at this point, and something we're not deciding on from a funding standpoint at this point. So I want to be clear on that. This is a master plan, obviously, but the financing or the financial options of these are for phase 1 further down the road. We'll talk about financing specifically of phase 1 in the next resolution, in the next agenda item. But because there is some confusion, not confusion, but it is interesting when you look at a lower increase of millage rate from what we did with phase 1, but your multiplication factor is a higher percentage. You're going from a higher number to an even higher number, and we can, that, believe me, we went around and around on that ourselves. I'm trying to figure that out. Do we need to muddy that water anymore? Because I can muddy it, I guarantee you. All right, Joe, let's go to the next phase. The timeline. So let's look at this. So these are where I was pulling the 5.95. Total square footage for both phases, 57,200 square feet. Total cost of the entire project, $14,410,000. That equates to a total millage increase of 5.95 mils when you include phase 1 and phase 2. The timelines are fairly set in the standpoint of phase 1 especially, and what these do from my standpoint is really tell us what we're looking at from a reality of move-in dates. But when you look at phase 1, we're sitting at August 2nd, obviously, and we have on the agenda the approval of this master plan. We also have on this agenda the approval of a resolution asking for a referendum for phase 1. That resolution includes a bond referendum date of September 27th. Taking those into account and saying we are successful in all of them, we began phase 1 planning and design October of 2011, so immediately following the bond resolution aspect. That would put us opening bids July 2012. It's basically a 9-month design process with a move-in date for the new police facility July 2013. So it's a year construction date. What gets interesting on phase 2, however, is when you begin to look at master plan approval tonight. Phase 2 resolution approval is to be determined. We don't know when that will be, and I don't want to safely say that we'll do it now or 6 months from now or 2 years from now, which would be another administration. But what's interesting is when you look at what that will take. So if you take the same ideas, you've got a phase 2 resolution approval of a to be determined date. Begin phase 2 planning and design, which would be immediately following phase 2 approval or the resolution approval. 9-month post-approval bid and construction documentation process, then a 9-month construction of the annex. So basically, from approval date, you're 30 months out. So I just want to throw that out there as a point of reality, and we're still 3 years away from even doing anything with this facility. And going back to the main issues, we've got huge issues on the police side. We know that. But at the same time, we've got huge issues from a facility that we're sitting in that a handicapped individual can't get into the building when court's in session. And looking at phase two realities, we're 30 months away from that. So I say all that just saying that it's adequately important. Did you make a copy?
Hurry back.
No, that's fine. Here. With that said, and there's the calculation sheet, the tablet. I'm going to open it up for any questions on the master plan. Most of this you've seen. Most of this was put forth by the Municipal Complex Committee. All of it was, other than some of the issues surrounding the funding. Some of the timelines have been tweaked slightly, but other than that, all of this has been seen from the town hall aspect. Go ahead, I'm
From
sorry.
phase 2 funding mechanism, you said you'd talk about that at all? I mean, is that a straight?
Phase 2 funding, there's no, this master plan covers nothing with the funding aspect. You're saying in the cost of construction?
No, just the 2.46 millage increase to get that 6 million. There's not a funding mechanism.
There's
for
not
that
a
right
funding
now.
mechanism tied to that.
Not a proposed mechanism
No.
at this time.
No. And it was only done so with phase 1 because of the thought that we needed the city and we needed the citizens to select and vote on this issue. So that was immediately put in the calculation of phase 1 only because I personally think, and I know others on the Municipal Complex Committee, thinks that's the best political move that we can from putting it out to the city and from the citizens to vote on.
And if I could, just from the mechanics of staging a moving of 300 employees out of this building, to be able to take the police force out before we start phase 2 makes all the mechanics of moving the remainder of the city staff while we're doing a renovation much more achievable. So while I personally would like to see us move forward with both projects at the same time, it is incredibly difficult, and I recognize the difficulty, not just from the funding side of it, but from the mechanics of moving that many people during a construction process. And I think that's why phase 2 is much more loosely presented than phase 1. Realistically, too, it would, as Alderman Dumas alluded, I think be the fiscal year 14 budget before we started to address funding of phase 2, if we went in that 2-phase project.
Just so that I make sure I understand this correctly, though, those phase 2, the phase 2 impact on tax payments that you listed, was that for the phase 2 and phase 1 together?
Well, yeah, and
Yes.
can I offer a
Sure.
potential suggestion here? I think those tax numbers do need to be clarified in the master plan. And before I say that, let me first say, Alderman Dumas, you did an excellent job in preparing the master plan, in organizing all of the work that had been done by the board committee, by the citizens committee. And I think that is a document that is 95% ready to go. However, before we adopt a document that is going to have such a lasting implication, I think that issue needs to be clarified. And one thing I feel pretty confident in is that second run of tax figures are going to need to be revisited. So one potential thought.
Well, I'll say this, unless there's an error in the calculation of these numbers, which I've vetted, and I feel comfortable with, these are true in what I was saying, in the fact that phase 1 is let's say a $300,000 house is $104.70 annual increase. 180 on phase 2 with the $300,000 is the increase from going from 23 point, because as it's shown in this sheet, for the Class 1, which is homestead exempt, would be a total annual increase in cost on taxes of $285. So that's both phases added. So the increase that's shown, $180, is, like I said, is only the amount of increase from going from Phase 1 to the end construction date of Phase 2.
So to put it simply, if this was a timeline like that, my first, in that high scenario, my first tax increase would be $108.
$104.07.
$104.
That's
and
correct.
then for a couple of years, and then when the Phase 2 was
That's correct.
enacted, it will go up another $108.
It goes up $180.30. That's correct.
It goes up to 108.
No.
Goes up
another.
Goes up another $180.30. And like I say, because if you look at, on a $300,000 house,
Okay.
At 20 mills, you're paying somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,
City taxes.
city taxes.
So you would.
When we enacted the first Phase 1, you increase millage by 3.49%. Your annual tax bill would then go to $704.70. So you've gone up $104.70.
Which is over 12,
So then,
14.
if in fact we enact Phase 2, which would be cumulative on Phase 1, your tax bill after Phase 2 would go from $704.70 to $885 flat, an increase of $180.30. And
Let me stop just 1 second and just walk through how this works in any context. Let's work with the figure of 2.46 mils. What a mill does
2.49.
is a mill is $1 for every $1,000 of assessed value you have in your property. Now your assessed value changes if you use that property as a home or if you have a non-residential purpose, or it is not your home. Let's just deal with homes because that's what the chart deals with. If you have a house that's total value is $100,000, then 10% of that total value is assessed. So the assessed valuation of your $100,000 home is $10,000. If you have a total of 2.46 mills, that is $2.46 for every $1,000 of assessed valuation. So the total number should be $24.60. And I think everything is there with the master plan. That one component of it just needs to be revisited so that we get those numbers accurate. Because once that plan is adopted, it can always be amended, but it's a document that carries some weight with it, and I think it's worth revisiting to take those numbers there. Now, one thing that is critical on this, and I asked the city clerk about it because it's important if we plan to stay on that timeline that we can actually still hold a referendum on this by September 27th. And she believes that if we took action on this at the August 16th meeting, that we would still have enough time to do everything that has to be done by the September 27th referendum date that's stated there. So I just throw that out there for consideration because everything going forward is based on the master plan, and I think it's important to make sure that the tax impact is very precisely and accurately represented in that master plan. So I just throw that out for consideration. One potential route to go with it is to table these matters tonight and take them up at the August 16th meeting. Alderman Dumas, did you hear anything I said?
I did.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I guess, would everybody like to see how these are calculated? If that clarifies what all it is? I mean, would it be better for everybody to study this and see how it's calculated, what the percentages are, and how it works? Because as you were talking about, when you look at a $300,000 house, at 2 mills, you're paying $600 a year, which with homestead, you're at 10% of the valuation of that home. So that's a $30,000 valuation, and at 2 mills, you're paying $600.
It'd be at 2 mills for a $300,000 home, that would be $60.
0.02, correct?
It's $60. You just
Of
got
the 10% of the valuation, which is homestead. So you have to factor in
$300,000
homestead.
home, $30,000.
Well, let's not debate this any further.
Yeah, this is not something that needs to be
because
worked out at the table.
Right. These are financial issues, yes, that have to be firmed up. Here, pass that, Alderman Park. I will agree to table it, because apparently there needs to be greater study in that table of all, so that we can look at the issues.
Mayor, let me ask a question. What's the magic in the date of September 27th for an election? Let's say we run afoul of the pre-clearance rule.
Yeah.
And there's problems with the 60-day timeline. We're already looking at post-pre-clearance. Now, if we approve something on August 16th and have an election on September 27th, the time frame is incredibly compressed, and we're really looking at post-pre-clearance. So is the election date movable before we make this decision?
The only thing I'll say about the election date and why I think September 27th is an ideal window, and really you're getting close to that window closing, is you're into October. After you pass September 27th, then that is a real mile marker for the general elections of state and county offices, and a goal of putting this issue on the ballot in September is that tends to be a dead period in the general election campaign, and I just fear if you have all of that going on at once, it's potentially problematic.
Marquita, does delaying this decision impact us adversely with pre-clearance?
No, because if we're putting it out to where the board is seeking the referendum, then it doesn't. If it's a reverse referendum where we issue, the resolution for the bonds and then it comes back, then we wouldn't have the time for the September 27th.
But because we're going straight to election, we
Right.
did.
Say that again. If somebody had filed a petition.
Right. If they had filed a petition, then we wouldn't have time to.
Right. But since we're voting if we voted for a board to do that, then it would be, you could go quicker.
They're two different processes. The way the statute lays it out is, and the board can pass a resolution stating its intent to issue bonds, and then you have a 45-day challenge period where a petition can be raised in that period. And if that petition comes, then you've got a timeline you have to have the referendum on. But the method that y'all would be using if you did it this way is taking it directly to the ballot, and you're not subject to a timeline like that when you decide as a board just to go directly to the ballot.
But as far as voting to go send it to the ballot, I mean, I understand the master plan would be a vital tool in showing everybody, but does it have to be enacted first before you vote on going to referendum?
It doesn't necessarily. It's just one point, I guess, for doing it that way is that is your way of adopting the project, which the referendum is based on the project. So it seems like you might run into a little bit of a cart horse problem, and that's why I checked with Marquitas. I was thinking through that because it may not be something you want to consider if acting on it on the 16th would cause a real detriment But as it looks like, you know, I think the board's pretty well, at least informally, stated an intent to move forward by the 27th now. So there is some form of notice out there, and then you make the official adoption of the resolution, putting the issue on the ballot on the 16th. It doesn't look like it jeopardizes your ability to actually have it on the 27th. So I just throw that out there or something. And of course, it is something we could always have a special call on as well.
If I could go back just a minute to the concept of the master plan, I barring whatever glitch we have with that table, I think it's a terrific document, and it sets us on a path toward doing some really good things for that part of the city and some really good things for our municipal complexes. I'd also like to really commend the idea of using what is just the management of stormwater to create an amenity at incremental cost. It will really cost us very little, if anything, more than just managing our stormwater, and we wind up with a very nice feature downtown.
The master planning document is elegant and I think does a brilliant job of encapsulating 18 months worth of work. I wouldn't change one thing associated with the master planning document except for revising that second table of figures, because I think it's important to make sure you've got the correct tax figures for that second phase of the project.
Well, and there were two trains of thoughts on that. I mean, it was the idea of showing it cumulative versus the idea of just showing it simply as what it would increase only with the action of phase 2 versus what it was with phase 1. I mean, they're real numbers, and I think when you begin to add it up, it does incrementally make a big difference. But again, I don't want to get lost in the idea that phase 2, whether cumulative or not, I think those.
It is phase 2.
It is phase 2.
And it happens later.
Yeah, and because I got to tell you, I mean, I was really encouraged by the end of the town hall. Frankly, I walked into the town hall with not much optimism on what the citizens' comments would be in relation to this whole project. And it was just based on everything that I had heard with the school bond issue, with the hospital bond issue, with county taxes, with all the different things they were. But I was very much impressed with the diverse people that came up to me and said how overwhelmingly supportive they were of the police complex. Now, there were immediate questions of what would happen with phase 2, of how that would be phased, when it would be phased, would we trigger it immediately, would we go into it 5 years from now? Well, 5 years from now is a different administration. It's unfair for us to assume what will happen, frankly, tomorrow. But the idea being that everyone that I've talked to realizes the need from a phasing standpoint of looking at these. The plans are the plans. I mean, and I feel strong, and again, I stand by the numbers based on what, again.
On this worksheet.
On the worksheet. And I'm no financial expert by any means, never have claimed to be. You can ask my wife. But the idea being that I personally think there's some real timeliness to how this thing triggers and when it triggers.
Mayor, may I be recognized for a minute?
You may.
I want to talk about the pre-clearance issue a little bit more. Whether there is a protest or whether the board goes straight to an election, pre-clearance has to be done pursuant to the Department of Justice. And the timeline for pre-clearance is 60 days. So the 60-day window starts with the board's resolution tonight and goes out to give the Department of Justice time to investigate and make a ruling on whether this election is pre-cleared. As a practical matter, municipalities struggle with that 60-day deadline. The election often beats the 60 days. That's why the term post-pre-clearance comes into play. As a practical matter, the Department of Justice also often gives the municipality guidance early in that process about whether there's a problem or not. And if they say there's not a problem, the election goes forward and the pre-clearance comes on the back end and everything's okay. I just want to state for the record that I can't say with absolute certainty that if we don't act tonight and we do act on August 16th and we try to have an election on September 27th, that time frame would not be so compressed that it gets us in trouble with pre-clearance.
What do you think?
Well, because we've always had the elections prior to getting clearance from the Justice Department, and when we're not changing anything as far as our polling places,
I don't think there'll be a problem, but I just didn't want to go on record saying that there would be no problem, because that time frame to me is just very tight.
and at either rate, whether we do it tonight, it's still tight.
I agree with that.
I think it's very important that we have this to be as not only accurate, but also as understandable as possible, so that people reading it know what their full impact is going to be on them. And the municipal complex has waited 10 years. I think as important as this document is, it can wait, say, 1 more week if we need to make sure we get it right out the door. And I say 1 week because I'm not opposed to the idea of us having a special call if we need to, so that we can have time to get this fixed, but still reduce the amount of time that we're allowing to lapse between now and the election.
I move to table the document.
Motion has been made to table the consideration of the municipal facilities master plan. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. All right, this measure's been tabled. The next matter on the agenda is moving forward with the phase 1 of the master plan. I tell you what, without objection, I'm going to rule that one dilatory at this point, because it's been rendered moot by the master plan.
And G as well.
All of it moved.
Yeah. Is there any objection to removing items F and G from the agenda as rendered moot by the previous motion? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none. The next matter on the agenda, excuse me, H.
Nope. I'd like to talk to H.
All right.
H is consideration of approving the development of renderings by the architect Gary Schaefer for Phase 1 of the Municipal Facilities Master Plan for an amount not to exceed $3,000. It's my opinion from the contractual side that we have reimbursement expenses in the contract. This was put on here as a as a form of courtesy, really, because I wanted to discuss this in session and get approval of this. This is timely, because what this does is give us the ability to have marketing materials for the referendum. If the referendum stands September 27th, then we are on a very fast track standpoint of getting detailed design to the point that they can render it with an external renderer from the architect, because Gary does not do in-house renderings. So when you look at the promotional campaigns, the commercials, the print media, all the other things that would come, regardless if the resolution passes or not, it's part of the contract that we have with Gary Schaefer in getting us to that point. These are important, because it gives us then the ability to go from a roof line on a plan, as shown in the master plan, to a true rendering showing the building footprint, the scale of the building, the details of the architectural side of the building. So this is not, in fact, a moot point. And so with that, I'll move approval of considering the development, move approval of the development of the renderings by Gary Schaefer for Phase 1 of the Municipal Facilities Master Plan for an amount not to exceed $3,000.
Alderman Dumas has moved approval of the development of renderings by architect Gary Schaefer for Phase 1 of the Municipal Facilities Master Plan for an amount not to exceed $3,000. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Parker. Alderman Dumas, you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
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 Measure passes.
Call me his name, please.
The next matter on the agenda is a request for approval of the City of Starkville Fire Department claims docket.
No.
Oh. The discussion and consideration of authorizing the city planner, building official, and city attorney to research and development requirements for accessory structures. Alderman Davis?
I put this on the agenda because frankly, it reminds me a lot of what we're dealing with in the municipal complex. We are allowing, as a city, individuals to go buy a temporary structure, a storage building, and put it in commercial property and use it as a primary source of business. And I think it's not in the best interest of the city, despite the fact that they do renovate them to the point that they meet building code and they meet fire code. I think it's not in the best interest. I don't know the proper ways to do that. That's why I would like to authorize the city planner, the building official, and the city attorney to look at ways through zoning, through whatever it may be, so that we can address these issues. Because not only have we had a couple recently develop, but I know of one instance that I've heard about where another individual is wanting to put a primary source of business in a parking lot in a storage building. And here we are doing everything we can, going through the motions of so many things of looking at the image, but yet we continue to allow these things by code to develop across the city. So with that, I'd like to authorize the city planner, the city building official, and the city attorney to research and develop requirements for accessory structures and to report back to the board as soon as possible.
Alderman Dumas has made a motion to authorize the city planner, city building official, and city attorney to research and develop requirements for accessory strucures. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do you hear a second?
Second.
Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Seconded by Alderman Corey. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing
Mr. Mayor, my question is this, give me some more about it. I mean, in the packet, there was nothing on there other than we're going to take this up. So give me some background. I heard what we just said. I mean, this is an isolated occurrence. I mean, I need to know what I'm voting on.
It's exactly as it reads in the packet. We are authorizing the city planner, the city building official, and the city attorney to research and develop requirements for accessory structures. To be specific, we have a new business in town, Giggleswick. That's not Giggleswick, but Giggleswick went out recently and developed their property into a nice business on Highway 12. Did everything they could, from landscaping to adding new structures to really renovating their business. All the while we as a city are allowing their neighbor immediately to the east to move into the parking lot where a I structure was, put in a storage unit, build a deck and a ramp up to the thing, and do so and it be a primary source of business. And I think it's laughable that we as a community allow that. I don't know how much more detail you need, but it's simply the fact I want to find out ways that we can stop this.
Mayor, let me say, we don't need to get personal at the table. I have a right to inquire about this.
And I inquire.
Okay, we must remain our professionalism at all times. I'm going to ask questions whenever I need to. So that's what I want to make sure, because there was nothing in the packet about that. So I want to make it clear, Mr. Mayor. So, you know, let's keep the decorum at the table. So I'm done.
any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is the request for approval of the City of Starkville Fire Department's claims docket as of July 28, 2011. Motion's been made to approve of the City of Starkville Fire Department claims docket as of July 28, 2011 by Alderman Parker.
Second.
And motion been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Any discussion? Any discussion? Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Chief, congratulations, your claims docket just got approved. The next matter on the agenda is a presentation from Engineering and Streets.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. I'm here tonight to talk a little bit about a potential funding source for some transportation improvements in the next couple of years. And would like to get some input from the board on the specific projects and if the board's interested in actually applying for this grant, if you'll call it that. So I'll try to be brief because I know it's been a long meeting already. Feel free to stop me at any time. I'll try to go fast. But feel free to jump in and stop me if you have any questions. This is what I'd like to talk a little bit about, the background of the STP program, some of the changes that they're proposing or they have implemented. I'd like to talk about some potential projects that I think fit within the realm of what they're looking for in the grant, and then provide those recommendations and seek guidance from the board at the end. A little bit of background. The STP funding mechanism is the way that the federal government distributes transportation dollars to municipalities, in essence. And in the past, they've done that through MDOT, of course, and it entails a 80-20 match. So it's really not free money. You have to pay 20 cents for every dollar of construction that you spend, as well as some additional fees. Previously, the way that they set it up is the city got an allocation every year in between $300,000 and $350,000, and the allocation amount is based on the population of the community as it relates to the entire state. One of the problems with that is you had to spend the money within 3 years. If you didn't, then the feds would take it back. And they simply did not want their transportation dollars to be sitting around and not being utilized and implemented into communities. They wanted to provide an incentive to spend them. So essentially what you had to do is the communities had to bank their several years of allocation in order to get a worthwhile project, because you can't really do a very big project for $300,000, especially a MDOT type project. So what that did, and this is exactly what we're doing on Louisville Street. We've done 3 years of banking. We have to meet the December 31st deadline of this year, otherwise we'll forfeit $2,008, which we still are on track to do that. But it does create a very rushed, hurried project, and sometimes, if some of these MDOT regulations cause additional time, you could wind up missing those deadlines. Of course, all projects have to meet the federal highway and MDOT standards, and they must be on the federal classification map. And this is a copy of the federal classification map. I think Alderman Perkins and Alderman Corey have seen this before in previous boards. Of course, this has all MDOT roadways on here: Highway 12, Highway 389, 2582. But also it categorizes some of the city streets, some of the main thoroughfares: Louisville Street, West Point Road, South Montgomery, etc. Some of you would think the major arteries coming in and out of the city. So here's a little bit about the new program, and you'll be able to identify some of the pros and cons immediately. First of all, it's a competitive grant process. So one of the immediate disadvantages is we're not guaranteed any money. It's all based on competition and how well our projects stack up versus other projects from municipalities across the state. These are 5 of the evaluation criteria that MDOT has included in their summary sheet, which I've included in your board packet as well. If you can provide more than 20% match, that MDOT's going to look good, look highly on that. I'd venture to say it's going to be pretty rare in these economic times for municipalities to come up with more than 20%, but nevertheless. How quickly can you spend the money? How quickly can we bid it? How does it fit into the overall purpose, and what needs is it going to satisfy for your community? MDOT and Federal Highway would like to know that, as well as if it fits into an overall LPA transportation plan. And then also, which is kind of a new angle from MDOT, kind of a new policy, is they're looking more at the inclusion of bike and ped facilities as part of projects, and that's now a priority for them in the criteria. Again, we're at 80/20. That does not change. The maximum amount for each municipality, as well as the maximum amount for any individual project, is 1.5 million. So you could have 10 projects, you can apply for 10 projects and they all equal 1.5 million, or you can apply for one project for 1.5 million. So that's the threshold that we have to stay at or under. And then they are going to require us to spend these funds or to bid them out within 2 years. And most of y'all, I think, are becoming familiar with 2 years in MDOT time frame is not much time. I mean, it is very short, especially with all the hoops that you have to jump through and regulations you have to follow. Again, the project must be on the federal classification map, and the applications are due August the 15th. So this is an important date. Unless we have a special call meeting next week, the board will need to give me some guidance tonight on which projects we would like to pursue, as this is a pretty extensive grant application package. Especially if we do multiple projects, we would have to do one for each. So here are some potential projects. One we've been talking about for a long time, certainly before my term in South Montgomery, and this board has started a process on studying that corridor and coming up with the best alternatives for solving some of the traffic woes on that side of town. I have put some cost estimates on here, and I almost was reluctant to do that simply because these are truly stabs in the dark. We don't even know what the recommended traffic section or roadway section looks like right now. So we don't know how much right-of-way we need. There's so many unknowns, but I did want to give the board just a ballpark number so you can see based on scale where we are. I would not recommend this project right now simply because of the 2-year deadline. It is, for a project of this magnitude, obviously probably going to need right-of-way, probably run into environmental situations we're going to have to resolve. That can easily push it through 2 years. I mean, really, we're looking at a 3-year process minimum. So if the board does include this or see this project as a priority, I would recommend let's go ahead and start the project as if we were doing the design, and next year, at this time when we apply again, we will be that further along in the process, and we'll have a better application. So that's something for this board to consider. They are going to do the same process next year, and again, it'll be another $1.5 million ceiling. And they've even talked about that number could go up a little bit. The other types of projects, and let me also mention, I didn't include this in the slideshow. Some of the types of projects that aren't really eligible are like a typical overlay. MDOT does not want to. Now the ERA projects were a little bit different. We were able to use ERA funds for overlays, but they would like, if you're going to do an overlay, they would like to see a widening, adding curb and gutter, adding pedestrian facilities, some type of roadway improvement other than just an overlay, which they would consider maintenance. Some of the projects that we could potentially pursue are sidewalk improvement projects. The reason why I would recommend these are they can be completed relatively quickly, especially if we don't have to have any right-of-way. If they're following existing roadways, there's less likelihood that environmental will be involved. We still have to do the 80-20 match on this, and keeping in mind, if we do pursue sidewalk projects, these are some of the things we really want to target if they're connecting to adjacent sidewalks. They have to be on that federal route, and again, I would recommend picking routes that don't require right-of-way, because that really does add a considerable amount of time. So here's 4. I got several more on the next slide, but here's 4 to consider. Louisville Street, the first one, is from the work we're doing on Lynn Lane, multi-use path, and the sidewalk on Louisville Street is going to start there at Louisville-Lynn intersection and head south to Emerson School. One of the good things about this, obviously, is it connects to some of the facilities that we're building right now or are getting ready to build, and it also connects to a school. Connects several neighborhoods. It's about 1 mile in length, and the only drawback to this project is really that I think it's a worthy candidate for the next round of Safe Routes to School grants, which would be a 100% match. So since it connects to schools, you can even make connections to the high school, the Christian school, the academy, and even up to Armstrong through Louisville Street. This would be a very attractive project for that program. And again, that's 100% as opposed to an 80-20. The other three on Highway 12, going from Jackson Street to Walgreens on the north side of the street, basically starting at Wendy's and going along, you're passing by a grocery store, Pecan Acres neighborhood, and then to existing sidewalk along Walgreens, which then ties to the existing sidewalk network there on Louisville Street. That is about 1,000 feet. Again, following existing roadway, I feel like we have sufficient right-of-way on Highway 12 on all of these projects that it's not going to warrant new right-of-way. The next section is really crossing over Highway 12 right there and getting on the south side of the street and going in front of the new sports center, shopping center, down to Willow Drive, about 1,500 feet. Part of that section has already had a sidewalk installed in front of Advance Auto and that old Coke site development. So we would be tying into those and actually extending that. Willow Drive is a primary entranceway to Long Meadow subdivision, so that would be an attractive part of the proposal. The reason you may ask, that's kind of an odd place to stop that sidewalk, and the reason for that is just beyond that is a railroad crossing. Federal Highway and MDOT are very reluctant to provide an at-grade pedestrian crossing over a railroad, so that would involve more like a raised bridge type platform and very expensive. And I would say, eventually if the city wants to connect that, we basically come in it from the other angle or build it using city funds. So that's the second section. And the third section is starting at Avenue of Patriots and going along the north side of the street to Kroger Shopping Center. Of course, there's a lot of retail along the way, neighborhoods, Green Oaks, and it is a very close connection to our Safe Routes to School that is in the design mode right now. They're ending at Whitfield Street. So again, all these are within existing right-of-way, following existing roadway. The other two that we looked at, one being the connection on Garrett Road from the new Pat Station, I guess it's the new Garrett Road extension. And as you know, we have a sidewalk there, and extending that sidewalk over to Jackson Street and then down Jackson Street to the Hospital Road improvements made in that area. I think you create a great link there that eventually will need to be made. You connect some neighborhoods. However, there is, I believe, some right-of-way that's going to be necessary on Garrett Road simply because of the topo of some of the driveways, and it's pretty steep on one side and then it drops off on the other. So I feel like we'll need right-of-way on that, which would again just really delay the process and may threaten that 2-year window. West Side Drive, I think, is a very worthy corridor there to connect Long Street, which there's existing sidewalks, a park, even a route to school there, over to Reed Road where the new sidewalks are as part of the Reed Road. Again, on West Side Drive, especially the west end of West Side Drive, I feel like we're going to have some right-of-way. That would be on both of these, if these are priorities for the city, I would recommend doing the same thing as South Montgomery. Let's go ahead and start the process. Let's go ahead and start the design and acquiring right-of-way. That way, when we do apply for the grant next time, we'll have the right-of-way in hand and we'll be much better chance for success. So both of these, while I think are worthy projects, I would not recommend just due to the right-of-way constraints. The last type of project I would like the board to consider are signal improvement projects. And this is basically taking an intersection that has the span wire with either a single or sometimes two of the large traffic lights. For instance, the ones out here in front on Lampkin Street, they have one light in a square box and it serves all four. These are very old lights. The electric department has a lot of ongoing maintenance with them, and they have recommended their top 10. I gave them the federal classification map, and they have given me their top 10 based on the amount of maintenance and the problems that they have with these signals in order of priority. And essentially, it would involve taking those span wire signals and replacing them with mast arm signals, which is similar to what we have downtown on Main Street. Provides an aesthetic aspect of cleaning up the intersection, but in MDOT's mind, they see it as a safety issue, and in that, they will provide actually 100% funding of that construction instead of the 80-20. So that is one of the really advantages to doing the signal improvement projects, and they're able to be constructed very quick, which is another project advantage. Approximately $150,000 each. I know that seems like a lot, but that's a pretty standard number. It also comes with the push button pedestrian signalization if sidewalks exist.
Does that include the sound, the push button? Does it include sound as well as?
I'm sure if we want to include that, we can.
That's an ADA
And I think that's a new federal highway requirement. So my recommendations to this board is really to do a blend of the two. Easiest, low-hanging fruit, things that we can finish relatively quickly, but still get close to that $1.5 million. The only advantage of going at $1.5 million is you have to come up with that 20% match, which can be substantial dollars. So looking at between 4 and 5 signalization projects, again, 100% construction, the city still would be responsible for the design, so that's in the ballpark of $100,000. Sidewalk improvement projects, I would recommend the 3 on Highway 12 right now. That's looking at a total construction cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,000. When you add in, when you take out the federal share, and for our total match plus the design, you're looking at $185,000. So in summary, you would be getting about $1.2 million worth of construction implemented in town for about $300,000. So while the money is not free, you certainly can make it go a lot further than if we were doing it all ourselves. Again, just want to reiterate, August 15th, and I'd open up for questions, comments, any revisions, modifications.
Questions or comments from the members of the board? Alderman Sistro.
Can we spread that local obligation over a couple of budget cycles?
It will be most likely over 2 years.
Okay.
Because the window is
Okay.
by fiscal year 13. And in all actuality, I think when you get down to the fine print, it has to be obligated by fiscal year 13, which means the construction may or may not be started till around 13 or 14.
Okay. That makes it
Some
easier.
of the specifics, yeah, that would make it easier.
Are there any, I know you probably don't know the answer to this question, but chances of, say if we got 1.21 million this year, does our likelihood to get that same amount or more the next year drop?
I don't know. That's a good question. And I don't even know who's on the recommendation committee. The transportation committee has the ultimate say in approval. I think it depends on how strong your project is. If you put forward a really good, strong project that meets all their criteria, and have some help.
Because for me, it was really disappointing on the South Montgomery project to not, that was kind of the plan we started with the engineering study, and we we agreed to move it backwards so we could make sure we hit in the school year, not in the summer, and
right.
So it's almost, those 6 months may not have made a huge difference, but this was the primary source of funding that we would have been using for the South Montgomery project.
But it would have only been about $300,000, maybe $350,000 under the prior program that we started down that path on.
Right. You
So
would
we
get
would
an
have
allocation of $300,000 to $350,000
a year.
Yeah. So it would take, we would be looking at fiscal year 14, the next project, and be 1.2 million. Same general scope and scale as Louisville Street, but it'd actually probably be less because right of way on South Montgomery is going to be more. We didn't have to acquire any right of way on Louisville. So you're looking at 1.2 million in 14, where you could apply potentially again next year for 1.5.
The biggest issue with the timeline on South Montgomery, I think, is going to be the right-of-way acquisition. They're going to be, well, that's not an easy process.
If we've learned nothing else as a board, right-of-way issues can stop a project in its tracks.
But I think if you take a proposal to MDOT and says, I have all the right-of-way in hand, the project's designed, the environmental's done, we're ready for y'all to approve it. They want to spend the money. They have to report back to the federal highway that they are effective in spending the money.
And you looked at other, you took a really good look at other road projects other than, that would have been on that list?
Well, you know, this is one of the things maybe one of the goals for the next year is to kind of develop a transportation plan for the city. And, you know, I was basically just taking stabs in the dark at what I thought priorities of the board were, you know, and under such a tight timeline for you to turn it around, I didn't have time to meet with every single board member and then also have enough time to do cost estimates and things like that. So, you know, I think one of the things that you're gonna be a little bit hamstrung with on road projects is they have to be on that federal classification map.
Right, this
And-
map here.
Yeah, and most of the roadways on that map have been improved in some form or fashion over the last 10 years. One that comes to mind that hasn't is Yellow Jacket Drive from, say, Eggford over to, that was actually a STP project that starts at Jackson. So maybe through that thoroughfare there and it's on the federal classification map. If you'd like for me to look at that for next year, I'd be happy to do it. Again, you're going to encounter some of the same issues with right-of-way. I feel certain on that. Roadway projects are tough to do in 2 years, and without having a jump start on it.
Well, I personally, go ahead.
Alderman Dillon.
I move approval to approve the top 5 signal improvement projects along with the 3 suggested sidewalk improvement projects with the submittal date of August 15, 2011.
Alderman Dimmons has moved approval of the top 5 signal improvement projects and the top 5 sidewalk improvement projects for application in the STP program to be submitted August 15th, 2011, as presented by the engineer. Alderman Dimmons, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Top 3 sidewalks.
Yeah, the
Top 5 road improvements and top 3 sidewalks.
signal improvements, 3 sidewalks.
5 signal improvements, top 3.
Top 5 signal improvements. Did I do it again?
You got
Top
it.
5 signal improvements and top 3 sidewalk improvements. Okay. Let the record stand corrected. Yeah. And do I hear a second? The motion's been seconded by Alderman Sistrunk. Alderman Dimmons, you wish to speak on the merit?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
By measure of 4 in favor and 1 against, this measure, by vote of 4 in favor and 1 against, this measure passes. Thank you. Good job. That brings us to the request to hire William Green to fill the vacant position of office manager in building codes and planning.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Alderman Dumas to approve of the hire of Bill Green to fill the vacant position of office manager in the building codes and planning department as presented. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Dumas, you wish to speak on the matter?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
By a vote of 4 in favor with 1 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the request to advertise and fill the vacant position of meter technician in the electric department.
So moved.
Motion been made by Alderman Dumas to advertise and fill the vacant position of meter technician in the electric department as presented. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion been seconded by Alderman Sistrunk. Alderman Dumas, you wish to speak on the matter?
No.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Dumas' motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
By a vote of 4 in favor with 1 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the request for revision of tap fees for 1 point.
Did we say engineering?
Oh, excuse me, I thought we'd done both of those. Request to advertise and fill the vacant position of engineering aide in the electric department.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Alderman Corey to advertise and fill the vacant position of engineering aide in the electric department. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Corey, you will speak on the merits.
Don't.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Corey's motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
By a vote of 4 to 1, this measure passes. That will now carry us to the request for
So
approval.
moved.
Motion's been made to approve of a revision to tap fees for 1.5-inch meters and larger by Alderman Dumas. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You made the
I don't know
motion.
what I'm saying.
It's been seconded by Alderman Sistrunk. Alderman Dumas, you wish to speak on the
I
merits?
apologize. No.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And that will conclude the open session portion of our agenda. We do have a few matters slated for potential executive session discussion tonight.
Mayor, I move we go into closed session and discuss the need for executive session.
Motion's been made by Alderman Corey, move into closed session, discuss whether there's a need to move into executive session. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion been seconded by Alderman Parker. Alderman Corey, you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. We'll now go into closed session, and I will give everyone an opportunity to clear the room. And as they're doing that, without objection, I will move us into a quick recess.
Facing our